Welcome into an all-new episode of Panthers on Tap. I'm Curtis Rauen, joined by Bryson, Karbley, Ricky Raines, coming to you guys on a Thursday evening. We are 1 week removed from the NFL draft. All that waiting, all those mock drafts, it's finally over. Panthers picked 7 players in this one. First off, Bryson, Ricky, good to see you both. We got a lot to talk about this evening. Bryson, good to have you back.
Yeah, it feels good to be back, man. I drank enough beer this past weekend to kill 3 men probably, and I'm here doing it again tonight. So excited to talk about the draft. I caught most of it in Nashville, just on random TVs or on my phone. So it was exciting, and I'm excited to get into it to see what you guys think about it.
Hey, at least if you drank 3 beers or enough beers to kill 3 men, you didn't kill the most important one, right? You're still here. I'm glad you made it through that obstacle course of booze. I'm happy to be here, happy to get into talking about what we did here with the Panthers in this draft class. Maybe some opinions that will be controversial, maybe some that will, be really good for fans that agree. But I'm excited to get into it one way or another, man. It's an exciting time. We get to start talking about ball on the field instead of hypotheticals.
Yeah, I want to shout out everyone who tuned into our live draft show last week. Appreciate every single one of you. Absolutely. We did have C3 Anthony. He did claim the jersey, so that is en route. Once Monroe Freeling picks his number and it's like official, that jersey will get shipped out to him. We also had the KK short helmet signed, right?
Yeah, that's right. And that's in the mail tomorrow. It is boxed up. Got that ready to go tomorrow for Taylor.
So thank you guys for watching that. It's been a while since I've done this. If you do not subscribe to our YouTube channel, please do. I don't think I've said that in like a year, I feel like.
Yeah, we do a terrible job at marketing ourselves.
But please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd like some movement on those numbers. And also, if you want to become a member of the Tap Room, you can do so. It's $3.99. All you got to do is go onto YouTube and hit the join button on our homepage. That'll take you to the membership room. And I believe both of the people that won last week are members of that Tap Room. You automatically get entered 3 times into any giveaway we do, and we do them very often, let me tell you that. So take advantage of that. We would appreciate it. Well, man, let's get into it. Let's go to the chat first, and then we'll get into what we're drinking tonight. So Miss Raines, always one of the first into our streams. I appreciate you. Great draft, so much potential and excitement. Looking forward to your perspectives. Go Panthers. Appreciate you as always.
What's up, Mom? My mom was also at the Bruno Mars concert last night. We sat differently, but her and my sister were at the Bruno concert last night.
I want to talk to you about that a little bit here. Carter, let's fucking go Panthers on Tap. First 2 episodes of our pod are officially shamelessly plugging his own pod. Appreciate you, Carter, for tapping in. The man we need to send a congratulations. First, cheers to Panthers Bo. That movie trailer, if you haven't seen it, is epic that Bo posted. And congratulations on the soon-to-be father as well. So congrats, Bo. What your wife put out is epic. What you guys did with that, cheers.
Dude, I haven't seen any of it. This is news to me. Bo's going to be Panther dad?
Yes.
Oh man, I love it. Congratulations, bro.
Check out the video they made. It's incredible. So cheers to you, Bo, on that. Told you I'd give you a shout out. We have Panthers Nate in here. What's up, fellas? We have JPT in here. Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning. All right. What's
Hey, it's overseas, man.
Happy after that first pick, but boy, does Dan pull me back. Loved every pick and the value was insane. We got Matty Coops in here. Solid drive. Excited for the analysis from y'all. I plug whenever I am. Ken, please. Amount of money I give y'all, you could pay the equipment.
He's got you there, Curtis.
Panthers, Bo. Thanks, guys. Cheers. Little Bo on the way.
Hell yeah, man. That is awesome news.
All right, Ricky. Tell us about this concert. Is this your first one at Bank of America Stadium?
That's my first. Yeah, that's my first stadium show at B of A. Man, phenomenal. First of all, I got very fortunate and lucky. Fell ass backwards into some box tickets. I got the call late of everyone else can't go. How about my husband? You know how that goes. Glad to be on the bottom of the list. I'm just happy to make it. But the show was phenomenal, dude. I'm gonna tell you what, Bruno Mars. That little motherfucker was jamming. He was rocking, man. He was up and down the stage. He had his band, the Hooligans, was phenomenal. The openers, Anderson .Paak had his alter ego as DJ Pee-wee, playing a killer set, get the crowd really hyped. Was hopeful that he would come back and do a little Silk Sonic with Bruno Mars. They did that. The light show was crazy. He brought out a stretch limo lowrider, sat on the hood of it, sang some Shy Light, sang some old school R&B. Him and Anderson .Paak were about to have like a urine off, begging for their women back. It was just tremendous, man. The crowd was super hyped. A couple of confetti cannons that went off. It was just a phenomenal time, man. Really good vibes. And he was very appreciative of Charlotte. It was a really sick environment, man, and a great show. I became a much bigger Bruno Mars fan than I already was. So it was awesome time, man.
See why Tepper wants that turf?
Yeah, I get it. Is, man, we were there on Friday for Max's birthday, and we got to go out onto like the floor that they were putting together for the concert. We got to go out when it was like dead empty. It was really cool to see that, and being out there and seeing it as big as it was and empty, and then seeing it filled and what they did with like the pyrotechnics and all that other kind of stuff was really rad, man. I do still think that the pockets are deep enough for old Tep that he could resod that bitch every now and then after one of these shows. I will tell you this. The traffic in Charlotte is not built for those Bank of America shows. We parked in the parking deck literally right across the street at the corner of Mint and Martin Luther King. And we were in our car from getting to the car in the parking deck to leaving for an hour and 45 minutes. And we had an 8-minute drive from the station.
You never parked there.
It was brutal, man. And if I'd have been smart about it, I'd have probably just packed a cooler and sat out in the parking lot and waited for it to clear out and have myself a couple beers, because I only had 2 ultras at the show, so I was dead ass sober by the time I got in the car. It was basically just water, and I had 2 bottles of water with the ultras. So I mean, if I had been smart about it, man, I'd have tailgated after the show.
Good shit, guys. What are we drinking tonight? Bryson, what do you got?
Speaking of ultras, that's what I'm drinking.
Dude, you're a walking billboard for them.
Yeah.
Speaking of the devil, that's what's on tap tonight.
Bryson's new nickname is going to be the Big Lobe.
I'll take it. Love him.
I posted a picture before we got on. I had a porch beer before I got on here. Bush Apple. They're for sale at our Food Lion, and there was a lot of them, and they were on sale, and I was like, I'm stocking up. I got like 4 or 5 cases, so we're good to go.
You bought the entire allotment because nobody else wants them. He's like, there's a bunch of them. People love them. That's why there's a bunch of them. They're
funny story,
beers.
Actually. So my wife went there, took a picture, and they had 24 packs for $16. They usually run about $25 for a 24 pack. The 12 packs were it was for $12. So the deal was to get the 24 packs. And my wife took a picture. There was probably 7 24 packs, and then the rest were 12 packs. When I got there was about 8 12 packs left, and I was pissed because I didn't get the good deal. So anyway, here we are. Ricky, what do you got?
The only special one that I got is from Creature Comforts. That make the Tropicalia IPA. It's a tremendous IPA, but this is actually their Imperial IPA, and it's called Flash Cat. I thought was appropriate for the Panthers. It's got a little pow pow meow meow written underneath that big old gold cat right there. 8% IPA, a little bit hazy. Got it in the glass to open it up a little bit. I just had a Tropicalia down there over at Browley's after dinner with my wife. We stopped by the beverage shop and they had it on tap. So I actually got to have a little bit of starter tonight before we even got on the show. But I have this, and then I got like a Labatt Blue Light. I stayed up last night after the show. We didn't get home until 1 o'clock in the morning. Needed a little decompression. I saw that the Utah Mammoth and the Las Vegas Golden Knights were playing.
Yeah.
And so I was like, hey, I'll check to see what the score is. I thought it was the post game, and it was actually the intermission leading into overtime. So I cracked another beer, and I sat on the couch, and I watched the first overtime. I started getting real tired, but I was like, in 20 minutes, I'll be fine. They go into double overtime, and I was fighting it, man. But I stayed up to watch these two teams that I could give a rat's ass about, and I stayed up till about 2:15 watching that hockey game. Playoff NHL is where it's at, man. It's hard to beat that. Staying up and watching basically a what do you call it? First year team in the Mammoth playing against the Golden Knights. It's wild how hockey teams can be so great in their first couple of years in inception in the league.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, shout out Canes. What they got? The
Swept them.
Flyers coming up.
Yep. Flyers round 2.
When is that series starting?
After all the other first round series are over.
So So it's going to be a while then. We got some other folks that have hopped in here. Dalton Hampton, let's go. Dan Cook, we'll talk about that. Con, good evening, fellas. Looking forward to it. Taylor, good evening, fellas. It's a nice way to start my overnight shift.
Taylor, if you weren't here at the very top of the show, your helmet is hitting the mail tomorrow. It is boxed up and ready to go to the UPS store tomorrow. So I'll shoot you a tracking number.
Your mom saw Garth at Charlotte. I did as well. He put on a hell of a show for that.
Yeah, man. My mom and sister are more social than me. They go to all the shows and do fun stuff, man.
Keaton, hey, fellas, unfortunately busy tonight. Oh, what a terrible excuse. But wanted to hop on and show some love. We'll watch in the morning. Appreciate you, Keaton.
Appreciate it, Keaton.
As always, salesman. Hello, trenches, and all the eggplant emojis.
Got them all chubbed up, getting them hog mollies in there. I like it.
Nate's got a Yabba Dabba blender from Hot Fly Brewing. Did I pronounce that right on the first try? Holy shit. It's a cool cereal sour.
Yeah, that's a cool beer.
Awesome. And Taylor got your note. There you go. Thank you. All right, guys, let's get into it. So, got to give Bryson his flowers. We texted the morning of the draft. And actually, I think Bryson kicked us off. He's like, I have a feeling they're going to go offensive lineman, Monroe Freeling, or some other person. I can't think of the name at the top of my head. And here we are, first night of the draft, and they take Monroe Freeling. So, Bryson, they already had Ricky and I's reaction right off the cuff. But now that you have seen the pick, what do you think of it a week later?
Yeah, I tweeted it out, and I think Ricky even commented on it. He's like, man, that's a pretty reasonable take for someone that's like 60 beers deep right now. But
that's right.
But yeah, I mean, I understand the sentiment of wanting Dylan Thieneman. He was sitting there, very popular player amongst the fan base, a very good player. But when you have uncertainty on the offensive line, specifically at left tackle, based off of injury and contract situation as well, you know, taking what could potentially be a franchise left tackle at 19 that I don't think a lot of people thought was going to be there at 19. I just have a hard time being mad at that. I think it was probably one of the most smart picks that he could have made at that spot. That's a premium position that a player that they obviously liked a lot. You know, watching that the video that the Panthers dropped that Monroe Freeling was like his like Zoom interview with, was it Joe Gilbert he was doing it with, and just like listening to him talk, like he's a super smart player. Has the size, the weight, the speed at that position. I don't know, Ricky, if you would agree, but probably like a little bit more of a project at that spot on the next level. But he's got all of the intangibles that you'd want at that position. So I have a hard time being mad at it. I was pleased. I personally wanted a wide receiver, but I'm cool with any of those three positions that we talked about, like Dylan Thieneman at safety, left tackle, or wide receiver. Like I felt like the Panthers were in the spot to go best player available, and that's what they did. So wasn't mad at it at all. I'm happy that he's a Panther, and I think he's going to be a good player for us for a long time.
You want me to go, Curtis? Okay. So we gave our initial reaction, obviously, but as we sit here and we get to look at it and we get to kind of like plan out what does it mean, the first thing that came to mind was all of the complaining about it won't be an offensive line player because of Canales' comments about not drafting for depth. But on this show, we've talked about this a handful of times leading up to it, where we mentioned that the Rasheed Walker contract is not the contract that you cannot start somebody over him, right? That was the addition to the offensive line room that made us feel better about the fact that Stone Forsythe was not going to be your starting left tackle in week 1. You didn't know if that was the last move. We also mentioned a handful of times that if Monroe Freeling was the one that fell right there to 19 to Carolina, that was the offensive lineman that I thought was going to give them the most pause for any other player on the board. He is, as Bryson mentioned, he has the size. He's 6'7", 315 pounds, almost 35-inch arms, great wingspan, an athletic player. He can expand the radius of the pocket just with his reach and with how quick he gets to the back of his sets. He is a tremendous pass blocker right now. Bryson, you mentioned, is he a little bit more of a project of a prospect? From the standpoint of not having a ton of experience starting under his belt, yeah, sure, he could be looked at that way. But I look at it almost more as just a developmental prospect than a project, because what he does have on tape is really sound work. Now, could he get stronger in his core? Can he work a little bit more in the run blocking with his hand timing and usage and his ability to uproot? He can. But as far as like a combo blocker, I think that he's a tremendous run blocker in the way that he will be used in our wide zone scheme. For duo and that kind of run style, he's going to work really well next to Damian Lewis. I would not be surprised if he is either the starting left tackle come week 1, beating Rasheed Walker out, just because you think about what Rasheed brings to the table. He's more advanced as a pass protector. His downside was as a run blocker. That was always going to be the thing that you had to be concerned about. You thought maybe you get an uptick over Icky as far as pass protection and consistency there. You get that now with Monroe Freeling, but you get a guy that has a lot more untapped potential as a run blocker. I don't think he's as bad as people make that out to seem. I don't know if it's people going off of PFF grades or what, but you watch the games, man, he's a good run blocker. He just has inconsistencies. He's got to keep the pad level down. That's going to be a thing in pass protection and run blocking with his natural frame. That is something that comes with the territory. But you talk about a guy that has everything you want, and you give it to Joe Gilbert. Joe Gilbert made Ike Ekwonu a much better tackle over the past couple of seasons. But here's where I land with it, right, guys? Because I hear all the time, and I saw it was Matt Miller, I think, NFL draft scout for ESPN, and he put out in his latest review of the picks or something, he likes Monroe Freeling. He had him as his like 18th or 19th ranked player on his board. But he said that now the tackle room becomes very crowded and it's an unclear picture. I just don't see it that way, guys. You know what I thought of today, and I wanted to bring it up. You know you have a franchise left tackle is when you don't have conversations about, do we have a franchise left tackle? No matter what progress Ike Ekwonu made over the past couple seasons, we were still having conversations about, is he our franchise tackle? Has he improved enough? Is he a good enough pass blocker? Do we trust him? Can he just move to another side? You don't have those conversations about guys you're sure about. It doesn't happen in other fan bases. Lane Johnson doesn't have that conversation. Trent Williams doesn't have that conversation. Laramie Tunsil doesn't have that conversation. You get a guy, Monroe Freeling, that you hope is the answer to having to ask that question. When Jordan Gross was here, we didn't have that question. You built around it. I think that Monroe Freeling is building around a true potential franchise tackle. I absolutely like the pick. It was the one player that I thought if he was there, he was going to be the one that threw everything off. And there he was. He landed right to us, and it works perfectly.
Yeah, I want to shout out the Panthers because I went to the walk party or whatever you want to call it the next day. And then they hosted a kind of a gathering after at Clutch, which was great for all the PSL owners. Free food, free drinks, open bar. It was great. And then Monroe Freeling and his family came and stopped by Clutch about midway through the whole thing, which was really cool. So I got to congratulate his dad, his brothers, talk to them a little bit, and they were still kind of in shock and just in awe of the moment, which was really cool to see. And then I also, told Monroe he better better keep Bryce protected and do everything he can to keep him off the ground, and even put a bug in. Hopefully one day he comes on this podcast and slams a couple natty lights with us or something. So hopefully that happens one day. But after the dust settled, like, I understand this pick. I don't hate it. I never really hated it. I preferred to go Thieneman probably at 19. Even still looking at it now, I still think I just like him as a player. But I understand it. It's a pick for the future, and the most important thing is to protect your prized possession in Bryce Young. And like Ricky said, the crowded thing, I don't think people really understand this offensive line room if they're making those comments, because you got Icky on an injury that no one really knows when this guy is coming back. You have Taylor Moton, who's on the end or tail end of his career. I mean, there was conversation this week of Taylor Moton retired when he had his presser the other day on Zoom. So those conversations are happening. And then you also have Rasheed Walker, who, for all intents and purposes, the guy, did he beat out some of the rookies the Packers brought in? But that guy was letting Jordan Love get knocked around all day long if you talk to Packer fans. So I understand it, and I think Ricky nailed it too. I think Monroe was that one guy that Carolina, once the board fell the way they fell, they didn't think this guy was going to be there whatsoever. They thought he was going to be off the board, and when he fell, they ran in the card, and I think that's kind of what happened. I remember Ricky, we were talking at pick, maybe it was right before the Jets live, and it was like, man, this board is insane. Monroe is still there. Sadiq was still there. Thieneman's still there. Makai Lemon was still there at that point. Like, they're all these guys that you thought were going to be gone by this point were all there. But I understand the pick. I think it's great. He's a good dude. He kind of reminds me he is the perfect guy for this show. He really is. Like, dude's out golfing, drinking beers. I'm sure he had a late night, the draft night, but I'm excited for him. I'm not going to reiterate a bunch of what you guys said. I do think, his strength is in the pass blocking game. I think he does need to improve in the run block game, but Joe Gilbert, if he made Icky improve, I think this guy can do really good things with Monroe as a prospect, and his intent or his measurements are off the charts. It fits the mold for Carolina to a T. So glad they got him, and glad Bryce Young will be protected. And like Ricky said, I do think he's got a pretty good shot of being the starter week one.
Yeah,
I really do.
And the versatility that even if he doesn't start right away, right? If there's an injury on either side, left tackle or right tackle, Monroe Freeling can slot in there technically, right? I don't think that they drafted Monroe Freeling to be the contingency plan or the succession plan for Taylor Moton. I know that fans about had a heart attack the other day when Taylor Moton had his press conference because everyone thought he was about to drop, the bomb and say that he was leaving the game. He said that he feels as good as he has and that he feels like he's still in his prime. That's not a bad thing for the Panthers. I understand the money part and needing to figure that out. But Monroe Freeling is also a cost-controlled measure, right? Now you have this guy for the next 5 years at a controlled cost at a premium position that is one of the highest paid positions in the NFL when they get their second contract or when they get a free agent contract, which, by the way, franchise left tackles don't end up on the free agent market often. The borderline free agent or borderline franchise tackles don't end up on the market that often. You have to trade for them. You got to give up assets. Carolina Panthers don't have to do that. All they have to do is the job of the coaching staff and develop this young fella and get him to the point where he can be that difference maker. I think that it's a really smart pick. I think it gives them the versatility. I think he has a really good shot of being on the field a lot this season, which should make people feel better about the whole we wasted a pick on a guy that's not going to see the field. I just don't see it that way, guys.
I have, if you don't mind, Curtis, I have 2 questions for our draft expert here and Ricky. First question is, I understand Icky was a higher draft pick, but in compared to one another, coming out of college, I guess which prospect, was Icky much higher coming out of college ranked as a prospect versus what Monroe Freeling was for you?
No, Icky. So look, Icky had that thing that Caden Proctor had almost to an extent, right? He's a mauler and he's got the size and the versatility that if you have almost like a fail-proof type of situation where if you need to kick him inside, you can still have a really quality player and that pick doesn't become moot. We already heard that the Dolphins are playing him at left guard, right? And that's because they drafted Patrick Paul a couple years prior out of Houston. They like him, adding that beef to each other. They like that pause. They like the idea of putting those two big guys next to each other. And so it makes sense for them in that regard, but maybe he even kicks out. But for me with Icky, he was not a refined pass protector. When you think about a guy like Charles Cross, who came out in the same season as Icky Ekwonu, he was much more further along as a pass protector. And I think that he's excelled in the league because of that, because that's the premium of that blindside position, right? And so what Monroe Freeling offers is a better player at that regard, I think probably right now. He's got better feet. His feet are more connected with his upper body. He plays a little bit more on schedule, and you don't have to worry as much about some of those things. I know OPM is in here already giving me hell about that. Adding that beef to each other is wild, Ricky. I'm sorry, OPM. I'm glad you're here, by the way, bro. I realized it right away when I said that. I was like, please don't let that end up on the Twitterverse. I just think that for me, Bryson, no, he didn't grade out higher. Monroe Freeling was a first-round pick. So was Icky as far as the grade. They both had a first-round grade. But for me, I projected Monroe Freeling as a much higher ceiling player than I project Icky Ekwonu coming out.
Okay. All right. Second question. Is there a world where we see Ekwonu moving to right tackle and Monroe being the left tackle?
Potentially, I guess you could look at that, but that would be saying that Taylor Moton would be out of the picture, right? And so I think that what they would look at with that is say, if Icky doesn't play at all this season, right, Bryson, and there's a high likelihood that he doesn't, and even if he does come back, it's going to be later in the season, and who is he going to take off the field? If they're playing well, if Monroe Freeling gets the job at some point in the season, he's playing left tackle, you're not taking him off the field for Ekwonu. If Taylor Moton is still healthy and playing, Taylor Moton has been our best offensive lineman for a decade. He's not coming off the field to try Icky at a different position. So at that point, when Icky hits the free agent market, a team isn't going to give him a giant contract coming off of a torn patellar tendon and not knowing what position he's going to play, not knowing what his play level is at this point coming off of that injury. Could he possibly sign back with us as a utility offensive lineman on like a 1-year prove it? Potentially. But again, then he's a depth player and he has to see the field to get that value. I think that they like Icky. They're not down on him necessarily, but they saw this as a true upgrade potential opportunity and they struck. And I think it's the right move. Icky could potentially move over there, but when you change sides, man, you're changing the way that your body is used to moving. That is not as simple, I think, as people think. I think kicking inside is a more viable object for him, but where does he go? Do you get rid of Robert Hunt and potentially look at him at a right guard position? Perhaps. But that's why I think it makes sense if he comes back in the Brady Christensen type of role where maybe he can have that inside-out versatility. He's not going to play the fulcrum. He's not going to play center. But maybe he offers you a little bit of depth there, and you already know what you have. He's probably comfortable with it. It's just going to depend on what somebody else is willing to pay him, in my opinion.
All right. So Bryson asked a question. I'm going to ask a hypothetical here. Icky Ekwonu doesn't get hurt at the end of the season. Who is the pick at 19 based off of what the board was?
I still think it's Monroe Freeling. And it's for the reason that I just got done saying about when we question, is this guy a franchise left tackle? And you have somebody that projects probably not cleaner, not safer, because he's not a safe pick. And so I understand a little bit of like trepidation there, but he projects as a much grander prospect as a pass protector and as a developmental player, in my opinion. And I still think that they would look at it and say, our offensive line last year, as much as fans like to think that it was tremendous, first of all, they played, a baker's dozen players across that offensive line. Icky has progressed, but in my opinion, and I'm not trying to be harsh on Icky because I like him, but in my opinion, man, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I don't think that he has answered enough questions to say that he is undoubtedly the answer at that position. If you have potential of drafting this guy, that would be like saying if Carnell Tate fell to 19, right? Do you not take it because you already got Tedero McMillan? If you get the chance to draft a blue chip type of player, and maybe Monroe Freeling isn't that to a lot of people, but I think he is to the Panthers. And the way that they speak about him, it makes me think that they viewed him in that kind of high regard of this is one of those players that if he's available, we were going to take him in just about every single situation.
Bryson?
Yeah, I understand that sentiment 100%. I personally would have a hard time if Iquanu never got injured. I thought he was playing at a decently high enough level to where you feel comfortable going into next year with him as your starter. If he doesn't get injured, I think they probably go Thieneman or maybe even like Makai Lemon at that pick to fill other holes on the roster. So we're not looking at Nick Scott starting another year, although Nick Scott wasn't terrible last season. We've all discussed that on here, but I think that the Thieneman pick would have been really hard to pass on if Iquanu never got injured and even if Freeling was there. But I do also understand that Freeling could potentially be a better player at that spot, and that's one of the most important positions on the field. So I understand even if he was healthy, taking that pick and looking at a potential upgrade at a position that is so important, to an offense.
And Bryson, if I could add one more element that I didn't touch on, but you were kind of getting to it too. The money element of this is a huge part. We just saw that they activated the 5th-year option for Bryce Young, right? That means that if he plays well this year, there is a significant contract coming his way, regardless of how you want to look at it, if you think he's worth it or not. If the Panthers feel that he's worth it, they're about to tie up a serious chunk of funds into their quarterback. Ike Ekwonu is going to be due for that same thing the year after. So what are you doing, or that same year, what are you doing with Ike if you're going to tie up that much money where you already have that much money in Damian Lewis and Rob Hunt? You could get rid of Hunt. I don't think you get rid of Damian Lewis. That's a wild idea, in my opinion. You got Taylor Moton. Are you rebuilding the entire unit because of that? Or if you have a chance to get this cost-controlled player who maybe even offers a higher ceiling, that's a good business move, right? So we look at it from just a fan's perspective of on the field, but we also have to think that this front office is looking steps ahead. They're not just playing checkers here. They're playing a little bit of football chess. So when they look at Monroe Freeling and they say, man, we got this guy locked up for, sub double-digit type $1 million for the first 4 years, that's a pretty appealing idea when you're about to lock in your quarterback for the foreseeable future as well.
I do think he would have been in consideration, to Ricky's point, because they were in on the lineman from last year. I'll never forget that. I don't let that escape my brain whatsoever. The guy that went to the Jets, whose name's
exactly Armand Membu.
So they clearly were in that, would like a very high prospect in that position group. But I'm with Bryson. Like, I'd have a hard time if Icky was healthy. I was talking this past year. I thought they would have locked him up. And I do think if he was healthy, they might have extended him this offseason before next year. So I would have had a hard time going in and drafting a guy who more than likely is going to be starting as a depth piece as your first round pick, because I don't think Carolina's in a position at this point yet to be having depth pieces in most of their draft picks. I just don't think they're there. They need guys that are going to come in right away. That's why I do think Freeling's I'd be shocked, honestly, if he isn't starting the first week. And I don't know if that's at left tackle or wherever it is. I think that I don't think Carolina can afford to have depth pieces on a team that just barely made it into the playoffs at 8-9. I just don't think they're at that point.
If they'd extended Ike Ekwonu right at the end of the season, and he played the way he played during the season, and he had his tape from the seasons prior, would we be having an initial conversation on this show about, was that a good idea? Was that worth it? Did we just make a mistake by paying him all that money? And if the answer is yes there, then I think that you can understand why the thinking of signing or drafting Monroe Freeling
I get it.
makes so much sense. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm just trying to phrase it in a way too that's less, because I could talk in circles about it, right? Because I like Icky, and I do think that.
But Icky's a very polarizing. He's a polarizing player.
And it's
There's
because
a lot of people.
So bad. He was so bad his rookie season, guys.
Yeah.
He struggled a lot, but he was a rookie and he ran through the gauntlet. We also have a gauntlet of pass.
And he also came in with a very talented offensive line group that year. You had the comparison of him, Cross, and Neal. So everyone had their pre-draft, mindset of we wanted Cross or we wanted Neal or wherever you fell in that spectrum. And then the start he had was obviously not the one he wanted. And, we know what the rest is history. But I think he's a very polarizing player. And some people are dead set on and not liking him, and that's okay. And then some people have kind of come around on him a little bit. But yeah, there is no question. If they would have signed him a long-term deal, we'd all be talking, was it the right move?
And correct me if I'm wrong, Ricky. I think even without an Ekwonu extension, the Carolina Panthers have the most expensive line in the NFL.
That's correct. That's correct. And
so,
and maybe they could draft a guy to play right tackle, right? Maybe they would have went like a Blake Miller there or something else. Yeah. But the offensive line was going to be addressed. And would you feel better about trying to scoot Taylor Moton out of the door? You're going to pay one of them, right? Either Taylor Moton stays on his contract value-ish, that range for the next year or two for the Panthers, or however long he could play at his level, but you know what you're getting with Taylor Moton, or you're paying that to Ike Ekwonu or higher for the chance of him continuing to progress into better than what he was, because I just personally didn't see him as a $25 to $30 million a year type of football player for what he had done. And if you can get a guy that offers you the same type of play, maybe a higher level early on, and for a third of the cost, it's a no-brainer for me, man. And so I think that they were going to make a move regardless there. I think that Monroe Freeling falling and having the versatility to play the right side, and he has taken starts there. He has taken reps there, so he can play. But as OPM said here on this comment, as a former swing tackle in college, trust me, moving across the line of scrimmage is tough. We love to be able to project those things, but moving to the opposite side and changing the way that your muscle memory works in your brain and firing off at a rapid pace of doing those things is a difficult, tall task, man. And he wasn't exactly shattering the game on the side that he's most comfortable with.
I also think too in this, and I think you and Bryson were having the conversation about, does Icky come back this year? We also got to remember Carolina went through like 14 different combinations last year, and don't think that's just going away because they got someone. Like, there's going to be injuries among the offense line. That first year was kind of crazy how that whole line stayed together. That doesn't happen very often. So there is going to be combinations. I do think we see Icky probably at some point this year, and it could be at a different spot if they really need him. Let's move on. Let's go to the second round here. So Carolina moves up a couple picks, and they take Lee Hunter at 49. They ended up giving away their one of their fifth rounders to Minnesota. They ended up gaining that back later in a trade. But let's focus on Lee Hunter for a second. Who wants to start? Ricky's frozen, so why don't you start?
Yeah, he's probably frozen looking at the draft guide there. But I'll be honest. This one was a little bit of a head scratcher for me here. Not that I necessarily hate the pick. I understand, you lose A'Shawn Robinson. It's never a bad thing to add depth at that position, but it just, I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't, and I can't even recall exactly who was on the board at this point, but I just remember, probably because I was slightly intoxicated, I remember wanting others, and then Lee Hunter's name comes through, and I was like, okay, it is an interesting pick. I know he has some versatility on the line. I think he's played multiple spots, like 3 tech, like 4-eye, a couple positions like that. And he has a little bit of pass rush capability there on the inside, which is, not something you necessarily hate to have there. The quickest way through the quarterback is a direct line, and right in the middle is the quickest way. So I think adding depth there isn't a bad thing. I was expecting a different name at this point with the second round pick, and hopefully he comes in and it makes an immediate impact and forces his way onto the field, and he's hard to take off the field and is that game changer. I mean, this is a guy that really helped one of your favorite players, Curtis, in the draft, Jacob Rodriguez, get free on a lot of his plays that he made. So he comes in and hopefully, pairs well with the likes of Bobby Brown and Derek Brown and Turk, getting in and making a difference, especially in the run game on run defense. So, overall, I was kind of shocked by this pick, I would say.
Before Ricky goes, I just want to read some of the. I'm trying to figure out what Carolina was thinking in this round, because I agree. I'll be honest, the entire draft is not what I expected from Carolina, but you had a D tackle go at Houston and Caden McDonald. I don't know if many people were thinking that. And then you also had Christian Miller go to the Saints 7 picks before that. So those were like the 2 D tackles. And at that point was Carolina thinking this was a thinner D tackle class from what all the quote unquote experts said? Were they like, oh shit, we better go and get our guy now? Ricky, thoughts on the Lee Hunter pick?
This is where, and I'll bring up this super chat real quick before we get into it, because this is kind of capping off the Freeling. Ben Davis, super chat, appreciate you, Ben, says, I've grown to like the Freeling pick. That's a sentiment I've seen from a lot of people, honestly, in the fan base. So cheers, Ben. I agree. All right, for Lee Hunter, this is where I veer a bit, guys, and not from the necessarily. All right, I like the process of drafting a defensive lineman here. I think that was a position where they needed to bring in reinforcement with the departure of A'Shawn Robinson. Makes a lot of sense from a process standpoint. I didn't like the trade at all. I'm just going to be blunt about that. I didn't think you needed to do that for this prospect. He was you can see there, he was my 7th ranked interior defensive lineman. Again, this is just my rankings too, though, man. And this is very important. This conversation that is taking over the internet right now about consensus boards and outside evaluators and then team evaluations. This is strictly my criteria, and everybody is graded the same. It is not the way that the Panthers or any other NFL team does. They have their own process. Luckily, our process is not Kyle Shanahan's process of, hey, we jumped on YouTube and watched a highlight clip, and I fell in love, so I'm signing him. Just Dazon Stribling, round 2. Yeah, good luck with Jonathan Mingo, pal. But for the Panthers, they're very meticulous. They're very well thought out. They have their process that they do. And this makes sense. Now, what they did later in the draft by recouping some of those draft capital that they traded to move up here, they got themselves back in competitive position towards those same picks. So I'm not upset about that. But they also had to make moves to get back there, right? Which made them miss out on some other prospects, I thought, in round 5 that made more sense than the guys that they took there. So for me with Lee Hunter, he is a powerful, dominant player when his pad level is right. And when he's firing with the correct timing. We talked about him during our last mock draft, and I remember saying, he's very top heavy for me. In his build, you can see it, that when he does not have his pad level down and he is not winning that leverage battle, he does not have the leg drive to collapse pockets the way that he does when he is firing off. Now, he's got some quickness and he's got some violence in his hands in the way that he can shed. He doesn't have a dreamy length that you would want, and he's a tiny bit under the threshold of what the Panthers historically have done, coming in at sub 34-inch arms, but he's right there at the 33 and I think a quarter, 33 3/8 of his arm length. Sub 81 wingspan, but he's broad, he's strong. He's an older prospect, so you have to go into that department of, is he more developed and finished? And he's not a finished product, but is he more developed and more finished than some of the other guys, like maybe a Dominic Orange that I liked a lot, right? You talked about Christian Miller going 7 picks prior. That was my defensive tackle 1. Similar build as Lee Hunter as far as the length and stuff, but he is much more solid and much more dense throughout his entire frame. His lower half is very strong, and he's 21 years old. That is just scratching the surface at kind of what he's doing. Lee Hunter, for me, is a more specific type of player. He can play the 3 tech. You could probably move him and play in 4-eye if you're running a sub package and you want him to take over that end over there. He could play on the outside shoulder. But I'm not sold that he was the perfect pick in that scenario. That doesn't mean that I don't like him, though. And his high-end flashes are tremendous. But what you're banking on here, moving up and taking him in the second, is that those high-end flashes kind of become his baseline a little bit more. And that's what you're going to get out of him on a consistent basis. It is going to take serious work with his pad level to get him there. The attitude that this guy has, the way that he approaches the game, tremendous. I think that is a great player, a great fit from a culture and locker room standpoint. I understand why they liked him, and I think you guys hit it nail on the head about the top-heavy draft for the defensive tackle class. That's what worries me a tiny bit, is what Curtis just said about, oh shit, do we need to go and get a guy now because it's a run? I hate that idea a little bit, because I think that what they did in the first round, right, of letting the patience fall to them and getting their guy, I think you probably could have done it here and still maybe landed Lee Hunter. Maybe he goes. But if he goes and you end up with a Dominique Orange and you keep those other picks and you don't have to move around so much, do you possibly end up with a better player in the long haul? We're going to find that out. He makes sense. I don't think that he's as clean of a 2-gap guy, but I think that he's a gap and a half. I think he can handle that. He did it on tape. It is there. It's all going to come down to how can he anchor and hold up at that point of attack, and that is going to come down to the pad level and leg drive and maintaining his conditioning.
I'll go to the guys who went around him in a little bit. I just want to give my take on him quick. We were all texting in group chats. I like the player. I've talked about him a couple times. I know Ricky, we had a conversation during the Senior Bowl. That was one of the players I had mentioned. And we talked about him on draft night. We were in that conversation. We were doing the mock draft with everyone else. I'm with Ricky, though. I hated the trade up. I did not like it. I didn't love giving up that 5th round pick. And Dan Morgan was even asked about it. Like, were you getting any indication that the Jets were interested? Because they hopped the Jets basically to move up to get this pick, or the team who had Minnesota, who was in there. And Dan flat out said, no, we just really were convicted on the players. So we wanted to move up and get our guy. That's literally basically what he said. And that for me did not sit. I wasn't a big fan of that. Lee Hunter, and this is straight off of my notes when I watched the Senior Bowl. No one can block him from what I saw when he was playing in that Senior Bowl. One thing I said, and Ricky touched on it, he had troubles with pad level, but by the end in some of the drills when he was being coached, there was a couple times he got sent back in the line. They're like, let's do this again. He did well after a couple rounds of that. But Ricky said the pad level is an issue. I put down here a top 50 pick. He went 49. Said he had a chance to go the first round. I just loved his size. I thought he was a massive dude, and just seeing him paired with Derek Brown excites you. But based off of the board, I want to get to that because I know Bryson was wondering about it. D'Angelo Pons went after him. Jake Galladay was there. C.J. Allen was there. Eli Stowers was there. EMW was there. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. Everyone thought maybe he'd be a first-round pick. He dropped way down. Anthony Hill was there. Carolina spent some time with him. Dan Morgan went to his pro day, I believe. Max Clare was there. Ricky's tight end. Bud Clark, the safety, went later to Seattle. So there was a ton of guys still on the board at that point for Carolina. Oscar Delp ended up going early in the 3rd round. So, there was a ton of guys that I know everyone was clamoring for that it didn't happen. But with all things considered, if he can figure out, some of the pad level stuff, I do think he's going to be disruptive as hell for Carolina. I really do. Paired with some of the combinations Carolina can do with some of these guys. And I think that's kind of probably what they're envisioning with this. But all things considered, I don't think it was a major need personally, but they clearly thought otherwise.
I don't have an issue with it being a need. I like it being a need because I thought that they had to address it. But when you talk about some of the players, right, that were taken after him just in that position group, you got guys like in the 3rd round, Tyler Onyedem went to the Denver Broncos. I know that we had met with him.
They brought him in.
Thresholds, and he met some of the thresholds a little bit more, offered a little bit more of that pass rush. But they obviously had an intent on bringing in a very big body, and Oyedem's a little bit different. But Chris McClellan went in the 3rd. You also had a guy like Dominique Orange that we were just talking about. He went a pick ahead of us in the 3rd round. So when you talk about the trade value there, if Orange fell to 82, could you have jumped up to 80 and not had to give up the same capital that you gave up to get Lee Hunter? Potentially. And I'm not arguing, man, that Lee is a bad player, right? Like, you got Anthony here in the chat. He says Lee is going to help DB Phillips and scoring a ton. I agree. In theory, this player should be very beneficial, right? And you say there's other people. I wanted to look at some of these other things, though.
Now, while you're saying that, though, Ricky, which I think is interesting, Minnesota's the one who took Orange. So I wonder if Carolina called Minnesota and said, are you guys going to take Lee Hunter here? And they're like, yeah, but we do like another guy if you guys are really dead set on him. I wonder if that was the conversation, because if Minnesota it's just weird to me. Carolina wanted to trade up 2
Yeah.
picks to go and get a guy. Like, that does not adding up to me.
I don't know that a team would be as forthcoming as that. Like, yeah, we do like him, man. We'll take him if you don't take him. But like, you know, if you got somebody, we like somebody else too. I don't think that would necessarily be their modus operandi, was to tell another team that they are okay waiting and getting another player. But hey, maybe, I don't know, man. Maybe
they
don't
have a GM right now.
Yeah, maybe they're just nice people over there in Minnesota. They have swell accents. JP here brings up too some of the production for Lee Hunter, though. And you can't ignore this. And I do think that the Panthers have put an emphasis on drafting production. And you see some of that because they have drafted for traits previously. And I think they're drafting a little bit more on proven production. He says Lee Hunter stats since 2023, tackles first, tackle for loss first, run stop first, quarterback pressure second. And that's amongst all DTs in college that fit the criteria there for those grading. JP, appreciate the stats there. The thing that I'll say is that his most productive season came at Central Florida. It did not come most recently with Texas Tech. And somebody else in the chat had mentioned something about that's why Romello Height and David Bailey were as good as they were, was because of Lee Hunter. I would disagree with that a bit. I think that David Bailey was a tremendous prospect when he got into the transfer portal. I think that he was just a great pass rusher, especially in college. I think that he's going to develop well and be a good player in the NFL as well. But I don't think that it's easy to say that like this player made everyone else better. I think that as a collective unit, they all worked really well because they served their purpose. And that's what the Panthers are looking for, though. So I understand the thinking behind it. I like Lee Hunter. I had a 3rd-round grade on him. I don't think it's a terrible reach, and I think that he could develop into a really solid player. I don't get the same exact level of jolly that so many of the fan base seem to about Lee Hunter, and they're like, man, this guy's going to be a knockout starter defensive tackle. I think he's a quality rotational player early on. If they can develop him, keep the pad level down, work on some of his technique. He does not have a pass rush arsenal. He has strength, and he can bull rush, and he can collapse a pocket. But as far as an actual arsenal and moves and the agility, the lateral quickness, and ability to develop that arsenal, that's to be determined. We're going to have to wait and see about that. Solid football player. I'm just pumping the brakes a teeny tiny bit. I like the process. I'm pumping the brakes a teeny tiny bit on the player, just me personally.
All right, well, let's move on to the 3rd round here. So Carolina finally goes offense. Well, no, they went off. What am I talking about? They go off wide receiver. So they select Tennessee wide receiver Chris Brazel at 83. We're all wondering, do they get another wideout to add to this room? They go that route. A guy who can take the top off the defense. I think he ran like a 4.37. Is that right? Around there. I mean, he can burn. Ricky, hopefully I'm saying this right, but it sounds like his route tree wasn't what's the right word for it? It was limited. Is that fair to say? That's from what I read, that he didn't have a ton of variation in that route tree.
Yeah, in Tennessee, they do their funky offense anyways, right? Where they have these crazy splits. The wideouts are super stretched out. He played predominantly on the right side. What gave me really encouragement about Chris Brazel was when you did see him align differently than just outside on the right side and running, go routes and take the top off and threat. He has the ability to sink his hips. It's proven, it's on there. He has good throttle down deceleration ability that shows up on comeback routes, stop routes. He has good outbreaking routes. He can show those. But what he does for this offense, what makes me so excited about it, and there was a conversation that was happening about Jameson Williams and Bryce Young getting his Jameson Williams. So I went and found some Jameson Williams clips of him in Detroit. What he does, you line him up, man, and you run him on those verticals. This dude doesn't need the same ramp up runway that our previous vertical threat that we were supposed to deploy in the offense seems to have. So if you got a guy that can get on defenders' toes quickly and that doesn't disturb the timing of a concept, right? It is important that if you're going to run him as a take the top off kind of threat, he's got to get there quick so that there's not congestion at that mesh point of where your intermediate route is meeting. We've got guys that can dominate on the intermediate routes. Tetaroa, McMillan, Jalen Coker. These guys are going to feast at that part of the field. Even Xavier Legette, they can feast on that part of the field. That's also where you should get your tight ends more incorporated. Do we have the personnel there? We're going to find out. But that is what the idea is. But the other part of it is that if all of a sudden they start saying, hey, they're not throwing it to him, he's just a decoy, he's just a threat, good luck, because he will get behind you in a hurry. And he improved his drop rate so dramatically. His drop rate was in the double digits before this season, and I think it was like 4% this past season at Tennessee, where he led the SEC in yards and touchdowns. Like, this is a productive football player. Yeah, he played in a goofy offense.
Yeah, Ricky, that's my question. How does he differ from the Jalen Hyatts of the world, the Cedric Tillmans, the Deontay Thorntons? All these guys have been drafted by Tennessee and then just they haven't really panned out in the NFL. Like, why is this guy going to be different?
I just think he shows a better route tree. I think he shows better ability. Jalen Hyatt, all he did was the vertical stretch. Deontay Thornton, same thing. All he did was a vertical stretch. Chris Brazzell also played at Tulane, and you can go back to his Tulane tape and see what he can do with red zone, specifically in a handful of games. Red zone whip routes, and a whip route is when you break inside, you sink your hips, and then you shoot outside real quickly, and you offer this little 7-yard, route to the outside. And really that speed is what's supposed to, that quick cut, that deceleration, change of direction is supposed to completely throw off that corner. That is what he did at Tulane. You saw it when he lined up inside in Tennessee too. They just didn't do it often. My biggest worry with Chris Brazzell, this dude does not like run blocking, doesn't like it. And he sells on run plays or plays where he is not primarily involved. There were times where he literally barely walked off the line of scrimmage. And it is a handful. It is not like off occasion where you can find this on his tape. Any game you watch, you're going to see him do it. It is a consistent thing with him. If he is going to be a threat, he is going to have to do the same activity level and the same selling as he is when he is the target in the primary and when he actually has a chance of getting the ball, or else they're going to key in on that and they're just going to say, hey, look, if he takes a slow step off the line of scrimmage, we know you're already eliminating that side of the field, right? So, like, that is a part that he's going to have to buy into. I don't know if that is a easy coachable thing for him. That's up to the coaching staff to decide. They met with the guy. They talked to him, right? They had him in for a 30 visit. I don't think that this front office and this coaching staff, as much as they emphasize culture and the people that they're bringing in, I don't think they're bringing this guy in if they felt he was a head case that they can't get through. If there's a little bit of diva to him, I'm okay with that, man. Like, some of the best wide receivers in the NFL always got a little bit of diva to him. If he is a rotational usage player early on, but he offers that threat, I think it opens up the offense a lot more. And it gives you the idea that this team understood where they were lacking. And they went and they attacked that area specifically. Again, I fall back on process. Everyone wants the yak contributor and one of the shiftier guys that can create, underneath and take a small pass for a long way. That also would be nice. But what if we have some of that, right? Like, Tedero McMillan showed that he could do that. Jalen Coker, I think, showed a little bit more of that as well. But they didn't have the threat on the other side and the other dimension of that offense to allow them to do that as often as possible. So you also get Jonathan Brooks back. You got ETN in the backfield. Maybe they have more thoughts about how they're going to incorporate those guys and create some of those yak opportunities as well.
Before Bryson goes, Dave Canales called this guy one of his favorite prospects in the draft, which kind of got me excited because, we all know Dave's background as a wide receivers coach. And, they clearly keyed in on this position the last couple of years. So that kind of excites me a little bit. I do want to mention, I know we have 250 in here right now. If you do not subscribe to our YouTube channel, please do. It's very simple. It's a click of the button. And if you want to join our membership as well, we do give away, we do a bunch of giveaways and give you guys a ton of opportunity. Most of our giveaway winners are our membership folks. So all you got to do is hit the join button on our YouTube homepage. It's $3.99 per month. We would appreciate it. Bryson, Brazzell, you want the flashy picks? You got one here. Was it enough?
Yeah, I'll say this. If what Ricky was talking about in regards to the lack of desire to block, he's not going to see the field. Dave Canales is not going to put a wide receiver out there that will not block in the run game. So I believe that when you step up a level in your profession and you go to the highest possible level in a certain profession, I think the best comes out of you in those positions and in those situations. So that's what I'm hoping for Brazel, and I think that's what Canales is expecting and this front office is expecting. I really like this pick here in third round. He adds that speed element to the wide receiver room that I was seeking in this draft. He obviously has the size as well. Of course, there are the concerns of the Tennessee offense, but Ricky touched on his Tulane tape. You saw what kind of receiver he was in a more, I guess, normal kind of offense versus a Tennessee kind, and he was really good. And I think he has that ability, of course, to remove that Tennessee background, moving to the NFL and going back to like his Tulane roots in regards to playing the wide receiver position. I really like the pick. I think he's going to be a very beneficial member of this wide receiver room. And I think before like the draft had started a couple of days prior, maybe I saw the comp, we were talking about being a diva. Someone compared him to like a George Pickens in the NFL. And I want someone like that in my wide receiver room. That's just nuts. Like he wants to ball every play. I love that. I love that out of a wide receiver. And I think if he brings that and he's also similar or probably less production, but close production to what George Pickens is on the field, then I'm perfectly fine with, taking him in the third and making that work. And, if it means he's taking a play off every now and then, and that's something you have to work through to get him motivated to get on the field more, I think that's worth the end result of the production that he can bring. So love the pick. I thought I was much more, honestly, I was much more excited about the third round pick than I was the second.
I want to go to some of our chat here quick. We do have a super chat too.
While you bring up the chat, can I offer one last perspective too on this?
Yeah, go ahead.
The development that this coaching staff showed with Xavier Legette on some of the things that he needed coming out of college, his release footwork, right, was one of the main parts that people harped on. He has a very diverse release package now at his disposal. It is not as always consistent, but it has shown that he has learned release techniques. I thought that with Chris Brazel on his tape, he showed more salesmanship, and you'll see it there on that Carolina Draft Guide page, more salesmanship at the top of his routes with his head fakes, with his pacing, threatening that vertical. He was more advanced in that regard, which is a great trait for him to have in the role that I envision him having on this offense. But the release package was definitely tighter than what you want it to be. I think if that's an area where they can focus with him and get him going, that's going to help on some of those short intermediate routes as well, where he can create space quicker off the line of scrimmage than getting into his long stride and take the top off galloping through, right? If you can work on that element, then he does become more of a threat on those crossers, being able to gain that runway so that when he catches the ball in space, and he has marks of this on his Tennessee tape, actually, man. I was watching the game the other night after the draft, and I believe it was the LSU game, I think, where he comes across behind the formation and they get him out into space and he catches it, and he's got a defender pretty close to him, but he starts to ramp up, man, and accelerate. And he's so quick at that he actually created about 10 more yards and fought through 2 arm tackles. He's not big and like strong, but he's slippery. Like, he's a wiry guy. He's got a little bit of slip to him. And I think that he can create yards after the catch. He's going to be a more multifaceted receiver eventually down the line, but what he offers coming out of the gates is something that this offense just doesn't have. And I think that it works really well here.
Katie sent us a super chat, one in an item, so I'm late. So here's $2. My apologies. Cheers.
Katie, you're never late. You're always on time. Don't worry about that.
Katie went to Tennessee. Look at that. As a Tennessee alum, if there's one wide receiver I'd be comfortable with having here from the recent, is it Hupel? It's Chris.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Katie there, to be honest. And Cedric Tillman was a name you brought up earlier. Cedric Tillman hasn't been bad in the NFL. When he's had his opportunities in Cleveland, it's just opportunities in Cleveland, So, like, he's had those Cleveland quarterbacks thrown to him. But Cedric Tillman, before his injury, was actually really showing out his rookie season. So I think Cedric Tillman's a great example of how some of these bigger body. With Chris, though, again, I know this worries everybody because of Xavier Legette. He does leave his feet sometimes. Like, he's got great leaping ability, and he's got that frame and the length. but he does leave his feet prematurely sometimes and make life more difficult on himself. These are all things that I think can be developed. You hope that that's not a recurring issue in the NFL.
Nightmares. Tiger said, not my favorite pick of this draft. Kyle Lewis or Malik Muhammad would have been better value in my opinion. Would it made more sense for the Panthers to trade for Brian Thomas Jr. as a burner?
I mean,
Muhammad went in the third though, right? I thought, or
Muhammad went fourth.
Sorry, fourth, right before Carolina.
Muhammad went 124 in the position.
We'll talk about it. We're gonna get there. We're getting there.
Yeah. But no, the Brian Thomas. If you traded for Brian Thomas, you're going to give up more than you gave up to get Chris Brazzell, and you're going to have to pay him as well in 2 years. So, as much as I like Brian Thomas, I don't know that that's a better value necessarily. Captain
Cringe, we're going to talk about this. We have a depth chart that we'll get to later that I want to kind of look at, and I'll make sure we answer that question for you. Katie again. Go Vols 199. I got to get another beer here.
Vols.
You hit the funny bone. That one tickled her. She likes any comment for Rocky Top. She's going to be in on. Cheers, Katie. Katie's at a bar right now having fun. I'm jealous. Oh, we're kind of at a bar, just here with our buddies drinking booze.
A virtual.
Yeah, all right, so let's go to the 4th round pick. So Carolina goes corner. Will Lee the third at 129. This was the famous trade back. So, guys, I will admit, Friday night I was out late. I was wiped out Friday after being in Charlotte all damn day. So I fell asleep at the start of this round, and it was like middle of the day. I took a nap, but I woke up and I still didn't miss the Panthers pick. I don't know how the hell it happened. And I was like, Carolina traded. Didn't they trade twice in this round? So they traded back twice. I don't know the terms of the first one, but they trade with the Bears on the second, and that's where Ricky was kind of alluding to here. Where Carolina, there was some, they brought in Muhammad for a private visit. I think they went to they went to Texas's pro day, so they saw him there. The Bears trade up with Carolina and pick him, and then Carolina picks a corner, 5 picks later, was it? Ricky looks a little annoyed here. So Ricky, fire away.
No, I'm not annoyed.
Don't tell us you had to be a little pissed off about the move.
I like Malik Muhammad a lot.
Yeah.
And I thought that Malik Muhammad was a guy that we showed interest in. I thought that he profiles as a guy that can play inside early on as well. So he gives you a little versatility there. I think he's a better tackler. I think that he's got similar range, maybe a little bit more dynamic athleticism than Will Lee. Will Lee is a good football player. Don't get me wrong. He had some really shining moments for Texas A&M. Believe he also played at Purdue, if I'm not mistaken. Believe that was where his previous tape was. He's a good football player. I'm not sold on it being a terrific fit with Carolina right away. I think that he's more of your outside corner. I don't think he plays inside. As a zone player, there's some projection because he played a lot of press man. Texas A&M moved him around a bit, though, man. He did play some off coverage. He did play closer to the line of scrimmage in some moments. He did play a little bit of like this safety hybrid type of situation where maybe that's where they see him as like a versatile piece a little bit more than I do. I think that if they are looking at maybe changing up some things schematically, this is where you start to look at some of the moves that they make in the draft and wonder, is there some stuff that we don't know about necessarily, that what they're doing behind closed doors and what they want to implement into the next season and season beyond that? Is he a Mike Jack contingency plan? Because we know Mike Jack is looking for a contract situation. He hired David Malgetta, who we all know is the boogeyman for NFL front offices. He is coming for your money. Hide your kids, hide your wife, hide your pocketbooks. David Malgetta is in town. Maybe that is what they're looking at here. I think that they also like Corey Thornton in that same regard. We can't forget that he's still on the roster. Will Lee, my biggest problem with him, man, a lot of arm tackles, a lot of missed tackles. He's a willing player. He's physical. He'll get it. He'll get Mixie in there, and he's a dog, bro. You want to talk about talking trash and really getting under the skin of players? He'll do it, man. So like, I love the mentality. I understand the fit there. I question, is he, when you moved off 124 and you saw Malik Muhammad go off the board, is Malik Muhammad going to make a bigger stride, and would he have made a better impact here in Carolina? Maybe they were rolling the dice there, thinking that he might still fall. They also wanted to recoup picks from that Lee Hunter trade. And so this is where we talked about that process and why I hated that trade, because I thought that the ramifications showed up here. I thought that if all things were equal and you still had those other picks, you stay at 124 and you take Malik Muhammad, right? But maybe they looked at it as an opportunity. They like Will Lee. Maybe they said, hey, we can move back and potentially get him and recoup those picks. That's what they did. Fine strategy. I'm not mad at it. I'm not as sold on the players. Sort of similar to Lee Hunter. I don't hate Will Lee the third. I like him. I don't love him.
I will say this, though, on the maneuvering. They did gain a spot in the fifth, or not. They recouped a spot in the fifth, but they also moved up in the fifth over all their other picks. If you start so, and that would say, do they get Sam Hecht at where they got him? So there was some finagling there. But it's a good question because they obviously went with that position group in that round. So but my biggest thing is, and I think I don't know if it was in one of the group chats or I even tweeted this out, and you touched on it, but the man coverage thing, like this team we know this, we've seen all the graphs about it. The cover three. I mean, Evero loves cover three, the zone coverage. And the one thing this guy excels at, he's not going to play much of it in this defense, which I know Dan was asked about that, I believe, on that presser and at the end. And he made the comment like, we're kind of betting on this guy's traits to, make that transition. Like this is going to be a transition for him. So like that, I don't love. Like, I don't love that when you go and get a guy like this. And I feel like some of these guys are going to get some opportunities to get in there. I mean, Carolina likes to rotate. And Ricky, you said he was more of a boundary corner. Do you think at all, like could he transition to that nickel spot, or do you think that's too big of a leap right now for?
I wouldn't love that.
We'll go to you next. I apologize.
Yeah. Sorry, Bryson, but you do look tremendous sitting there above me. You look great tonight. Let me make this quick. I don't love the transition inside. That is that thing that he's talking about where the traits. Can it mitigate a little bit of his long speed by playing a boundary off coverage zone defense? Yes, it can. Is he as proficient in space as he is jamming a wide receiver? No, I don't think he's there right now. Now, what it also helps, though, is when he turns his back against the quarterback, against shiftier, quicker wide receivers, he gets himself in trouble a good bit. And so that limits that mitigates that. Maybe that's what he's talking about, with those traits being able to translate. And can he acclimate to that role? Maybe. I don't love him inside. Bryson, I think that would be dangerous as far as run support. Your nickel has to be good at so many things. And run support and physicality and short tackling is one of them. And I don't love his projection in that regard.
Yeah, I don't have like a lot more to add to this pick than what you guys have said, but I am going to touch on this super chat here from Katie. Another one from her. Good old Rocky Top, Tennessee. She loves her some balls, man. I mean, I guess if I went there too, I'd probably love them, but cheers.
One could say that Katie is at the Pat summit of her evening talking about the Tennessee Volunteer. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
She also says Chicago took all Ricky's guys.
Dog, they really did. They really did. And I hate seeing them go to a team that's coached by Ben Johnson with Luther Burden. Look, man, that's dangerous.
Yeah, that was tough. I'm similar as you guys, man. The zone versus man coverage in regards to this guy's traits is a head scratcher for me. He's got the intangibles, the size, the appropriate speed. I wouldn't say it's like above average or anything like that, but he's got enough speed to play the position. I do love his mentality, the way he plays. Ricky touched on it earlier, that dog, like not afraid to talk shit, get in your face, push you on the sideline. Don't get any stupid penalties, but be smart about it and get in people's heads. I'm cool with that. But the transition, I believe, is going to be a tough one for him, man. I really do. When you're used to being that, I think he said it himself. He thought he was the best press man corner in the NFL draft this year. You're not going to be playing a lot of press man in Carolina, as much as we hate to say that because I'm a big fan of that. But it's a lot of zone, and you guys touched on it. It is going to be a big transition for him, so we'll see how that works out. But they're betting on his traits, like Dan Morgan said, and we'll see where that goes.
But do they maybe transition, Bryson? Like maybe we see some more man implementation, right? And maybe you can take, but maybe because look, what if you can take like those red zone defenses that we always got in trouble with, right?
Yeah.
What if you were just hear me out on this, right? Hypothetically speaking, if Will Lee is such a good press corner and you're in a 10-yard, 8-yard radius, right? It's second and goal, third and goal, and they're in a pass probable situation, and you bring Mike Jack off the field and you put Will Lee and JC Horn out there, if they're going heavy personnel, right? 12 personnel, so you only got 2 wide receivers, and you change your coverages up a little bit and you have 2 press corners out there. Could we see some different things from this defense because of the fact that they have personnel that can run it? That could be a little bit of their thinking too, is that, hey, just because we haven't done it, what if we can though? Like what if we have the personnel to do it? Evero's not as stubborn as people think he is, man. Evero has changed up some of the things he did. When we got Trayvon Merrick, he changed up a lot of the things that he did. And that's a different personnel piece than what we had previously. So maybe incorporating some of these pieces like they did with Chris Brazzell on the offensive side, maybe just adding the different tools to the toolbox, they feel like they could build more shit, right? Like if you try to build a doghouse and all you have is duct tape and Cheetos, you're not going to build a very good doghouse. But if all of a sudden you got 4x4s and nails and a hammer, hey, even an idiot could go out there and put some of that shit together. So, like, that's what I would look at it. We got rid of some Cheetos and we got some 4x4s.
What's his measurements? Does he fit like the bill for Carolina?
He's a little bit light. He's like 189 pounds, but 6'1", pretty good size. I mean, that fits what they're looking for. But he's light, man. And that's the part that always threw me off a little bit, is that they got some stout defenders. And what we use our corners for, run support is a critical part of this coverage that we run, this scheme that we run. And I do worry a little bit about the fact that if he does take over, if Mike Jack is hurt or JC is hurt, and they all of a sudden have to go to that, I do think that is a interesting scenario to see what that does to the run defense. But again, Corey Thornton is still in play there, and they like Corey. I think Corey got the nod inside a lot because of necessity, but I think they like Corey a lot as an outside corner. So that still gives you a little flexibility there and try to develop Will Lee a little bit.
What if they're really looking ahead and Mike Jack's going after this year and they go full on man press with JC Thornton and Will Lee?
It's possible, right? And look, they got the most out of Mike Jackson that anyone in his career has gotten. And Mike Jackson ran a similar 40 time, had some of the same similar, speed questions. So I think that it makes sense, man. But when we get to these next picks, boys, this is where I am okay with the Will Lee, with the Lee Hunter and stuff, is because it enabled, as Curtis and Bryson both alluded to earlier, it enabled these next things that we did that I think, at least one of them, I am very, 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 very high on.
All right, without further ado, let's get to it. Carolina picks Sam Heck at 144, and then they get Zakee Wheatley at 151. Ricky, we were chatting offline. Heck is probably my favorite pick of the draft. When it comes to value for this team, I think is a surefire starter at center for a very long time in Carolina. 7 pressures, no sacks, no QB hits, and no penalties. Off the charts number-wise. We'll see what happens here, but I think he could push, was it Fortner? From Fortner. Detroit for that starting job off the jump here. But yeah, for the value, I think Carolina nailed it with Sam Heck. And a lot would even say with Wheatley. I don't know a ton about Wheatley, so I'm not going to speak on him. But I'll tell you what, Heck, it was a guy we've talked about numerous times that we've mocked a lot of our mock drafts. I think we had a couple of times where we got him. He dropped, obviously, in this one, in the actual draft. But for Carolina to get him in the 5th is outstanding.
Bryson, why don't you start?
Yeah, for me, I feel like these 2 picks were the best picks in succession of each other in this draft. Sam Heck and then Zakee Wheatley. Loved them. They were the players I wanted at both of those picks. I think, Curtis, you had drafted, like, give me Sam Hecht here at this pick, and then they took him. So I'm sure you were happy with that. But I agree with you, Curtis. I think this guy, for me, is more of an unquestioned starter day one than Monroe Freeling at left tackle. I think Sam Hecht is your center day one. Loved him coming out. I know many people had him as the best center in the draft. Ricky had a second-round grade on him. We get him at 144. I thought the value there was just fantastic. I don't think they expected him to be there this late, but loved it. I agree. My Hecht in particular was my favorite pick in the draft, and I loved where we got Wheatley as well. I think Wheatley is going to challenge for that starting safety spot as well, opposite of Trayvon Merrick. So yeah, these two picks, in my opinion, the best two picks in succession of each other in this draft.
Sam Hecht was a home run pick for me.
Yep.
I mean, absolutely home run. And it made me feel so much better about, and not that I was feeling bad. I don't want to make it seem like I was like doom and gloom. I wasn't, man. I understood the process and enjoyed this draft by the Carolina Panthers. But Sam Hecht, getting him at this junction of the draft was a dream to me. You see it there with a second round grade. I was extremely high on this player. I think that he fits the Carolina zone running concept to a T. When this guy gets out in space, he is such a good mover. He has great hand timing, can climb to that second level, is sturdy against, the pass rush. 0 sacks allowed. And this dude played a lot of football. 0 sacks allowed. What's interesting to me, guys, the amount of times that he was asked to take guard reps in those all-star games, right? Can you show some versatility there? That's important because we always thought that the Carolina Panthers would have a high interest in grabbing an interior lineman that could offer that versatility. That's where I become the tiniest bit hesitant on does he win the starting center job day one? Because we've seen them do this thing before where they're like, hey, we like this player better than the guy that we put in, but we want to hold off the versatility in case something bad happens. Chandler Zavala saw the field a lot because they wanted to have their better player available for if Chandler got hurt. That's stupid as hell, first of all. Don't do that again. If Sam Hecht is better than Luke Fortner, you play Sam Hecht. I think there is a good shot that Sam Hecht is better than Luke Fortner. But, hey, good news, everybody. I'm here to spread the good news, right? I'm knocking at your front door right now, and I got a brochure. Have you heard the good news? Luke Fortner signed a backup contract as well, like Rasheed Walker. Everyone thought that that was our guaranteed starter because we signed him, but we signed them both for backup money. And then we brought in players that are probably better players that can play. The question will be, do you want 2 rookies playing along that offensive line for Bryce Young? But you got training camp, you got rookie camp, you got preseason. Hey, Dave Canales, Brad Idzik, you're getting your shot here as offensive coordinator. If I were you, pal, I'd take a nice hot cup of coffee into Dave Canales' offense the first day that you guys meet before the preseason game, and I'd say, hey, Dave, crazy concept. I want to play these guys. I want to play them together with the unit that they're going to play on Sundays, and I want to see what we have, and I want to put them through the ringer. Let's get some experience for these boys on the NFL field, because if you get Sam Hecht and Monroe Freeling comfortable, you could be looking at your long-term projects playing out day one, and you could see your future playing out in the present. Sam Hecht offers something that we have not had at the center position for a very long time, and that is long-term projection and stability. As a pass protector, he's phenomenal. Cade Mays was also a pretty dang good pass protector, so you don't fall off the cliff there. As a run blocker, Sam Hecht offers more movement than Cade Mays did. Cade Mays, what you always wanted was more from him. You saw him, we talked about this before, looking like, Black Swan out there on some of these run plays where he's doing the pirouette and turning it into a horror movie. That's not Sam Hecht. Sam Hecht is spatially aware. He is comfortable reaching and climbing to that second level. He will find his defenders. He is a target monster. You put that target on somebody's back, he reaches it in the correct timing. This is a very good interior offensive lineman. He is a proven player. He is not a project. I think that the only question that you have is how does he hold up against like the really stout interior defenders when he's lined up, against a nose tackle in zero or shade technique and he gets his paws on him, can he uproot him a little bit? Does he have the anchor to sit his ass all the way down? I think he does. We're going to find out about that. But this is a really smart player. So handling the communication aspect of the offensive line also does not bother me. I think that they made a conscious decision with Monroe Freeling and Sam Heck to get cerebral offensive linemen in here. You saw the Zoom with Joe Gilbert. You hear Sam Hecht and his teammates talk about him. You hear the interviews. He's one of the only people I've ever seen do an interview with Kay Adams and not get flustered. All he did was talk ball. He never once said anything about like, hey, did you know that when I was in 8th grade, they wanted me to join the Olympics? Like, he didn't do any of that kind of shit. He literally talked to her about ball, and he kept his composure. If you could keep your composure in front of that lovely little Polish lady, I think you're going to be okay on Sundays.
I will say this, ladies, get you a man the way that Sam Heck was gleaming at her in that interview. He was smirking the entire time.
He's smirking, but he kept his composure, man. He's a sharp guy.
While Ricky pulls up the Wheatley page he's got, I want to go to these super chats here quick because we didn't get to touch on him, and I know Ricky did probably the most background out of us three on that. Katie says here the Jeremy Pruitt era as a freshman was horrific. So cheers, Katie. Katie's on the 199 binge right now. So cheers. Appreciate you. She also says Panthers to the bowl. Woo. Woo! All right, 199.
That would be something. That would be something.
All right, Ricky, tell us more about Wheatley. Everyone's talking, and I've seen this on the quote-unquote grades that the experts give every team, even though none of these guys have played a damn snap in the NFL. A lot of people talked about this Wheatley pick and good value as well. What do you like from him, and what do you think he needs to improve on?
What's interesting is that Zakee Wheatley, where he was drafted, actually fell very much in line with where I had him graded and ranked. And that throws some people off. People that I respect very much thought way high of Zakee Wheatley. I'll bring up Jared Feinberg, friend of the show, friend of mine. Very high. This was like one of his top 3, top 5 safeties, I believe, in the class. Zakee Wheatley is a proven player. He's played a lot of snaps. He was probably one of the only bright spots for that Penn State defense on a consistent basis. All right. Let me throw something out real quick. Bryson, you said you think that Zakee Wheatley has a good chance of becoming the starter opposite of Trayvon Merrick and taking over for Nick Scott. I'm not sure I'm there with him, but what I think is when we've all asked these questions about, hey, can this corner kick into nickel? Can this guy play inside? Zakee Wheatley might have a chance at playing nickel because what this dude does well and less redundant than Trayvon Merrick as people think, terrific in run support, but it's his range in run support, his ability to come downhill in run support, but then his takeaway ability from a secondary player standpoint, he can turn the ball over and he's got range. The speed in the 40 threw a lot of people off about this guy, and it is a low speed. And so if you're one of those people that does look at historic testing and where that player kind of turned into, it's not a great standpoint for Zakee Wheatley in that regard. So that's a fair, I don't think that's a bad thing to critique, man. I think that is okay. You look at the 10-yard split, even that's a little bit slow. So it shows like his immediate quickness and lateral ability to move, change of direction. But the tape doesn't show a slow player. The tape shows a guy with incredible range, especially in run support, but that has a bereft knowledge about coverages or about route concepts and the coverages that can play with that and where he needs to be. This dude is in position so often, and that I think is a staple of what makes him a good defender. I also think he is an immediate special teams contributor. I think that he plays with a attacking style that will play well there. Is he a rotational player early? Perhaps. I'm not sure that we see him as a starter right away or even maybe his first season, but I think that they like the developmental traits. And if they like the 3 safety looks that we saw so much with Nick Scott, Lathan Ransom, and Trey Merrick, could Zakee Wheatley work his way into some of those 3 safety looks and maybe some of those nickel packages, right? If Trey is playing the dime linebacker, do they put Zakee back there with Nick Scott or maybe even Shaw Smith-Wade? Like, they have things at their disposal now that, again, like we spoke about earlier with the dog houses and the snack bags of chips, this is another tool that you're adding that offers the versatility and diverse outcome that you can put out on the field.
Let's go to the final pick here of the draft, and that's Jackson Kuwach, 227, went to Miami, Ohio. Did you ever – was this guy in the guide, Ricky, or no?
This guy wasn't watched for me, to be completely honest.
I figured that, but I was like, yeah, you never know. Ricky's a nerd, and he'll go to the great depths.
This was Ricky's linebacker too.
Hey, I wish that I could put that feather in my cap, boys. But this one was, when I saw the name Jackson Kuwach, for me it was Jackson who watched. Like I didn't get eyes on him, man. Now I've watched some things since then. I like the size. I am very intrigued by his ability to close quickly, and his diagnostic ability seems very sharp. But I have not done a full study on this guy, so I'm not going to talk as if I am a expert on his possibilities. What I have heard and gathered from Dan Morgan speaking about it, and from the way that they talk about him, they love this guy from a film study standpoint. Luke Kuechly is his favorite player. The frame is there. The athleticism is there. I just think that it's going to be an acclimation period coming from Miami, Ohio, and getting used to what the next level is going to ask of him. But again, like Zakee Wheatley, I see this as a true special teams contributor early on. And I think that he pushes a guy like Claude Cherylus. I think he pushes the back half of that linebacker room to really make the roster instead of being a shoo-in. Maybe he pushes Trevin Wallace, but I don't know that was necessarily the thinking. I think that they just said, hey, this is a guy in the 7th round that we like a whole lot, and we feel like we can develop him because he has some athletic ability.
I will say this. I saw a bunch of chatter when he was drafted. There was a lot of teams that wanted to take a dart throw on him. I saw Philly fans. I saw Rams fans. This account on Twitter posted this. This was before the draft. Jackson Kuwach had the fastest 10-yard split in the entire mock draftable database. He's so incredibly quick between the tackles. He can move, he can cover. He's a borderline top 100 according to this account. But hey, I mean, there's traits there. I don't know a ton about him, but I saw that tweet. That was a couple days before the draft. So interesting. But I agree with Ricky though. Like, a lot of these guys in the back end are really going to push, and they talked about it last year. They talked about this year. Special teams is huge, and there's a lot of guys that have made impact for Carolina on special teams that have either come in the late rounds or even the undrafted guys and those are big part. I mean, we're talking about Isaiah Simmons. Granted, this guy's been in the league forever, but making a very crucial play in that playoff game against the Rams, like, there's plays to be made that can really impact the game. So I think a lot of these guys, most of the time you're going off traits later in the back end of the draft, but we'll see. We'll see if he makes anything shake here in both rookie camp or training camp.
Talking about pedigree, if I'm not mistaken, didn't this guy transfer from Ohio State to Miami of Ohio because he wasn't getting playing time?
He did.
So he was on a good football team at one point.
That's right. That's right. No, that's right. And you can't dismiss that, right? Yeah. Like he worked his way on to one of the better programs in college football that has a historic, history at that position of linebacker.
Yeah.
And what you talk about too is raising the floor of a position room. That's when you're bringing in high level athletes. Like, look, we had Chris Barnes last season, and he was a serviceable veteran that we just needed the experience. But then you looked at some of the things from an athletic standpoint, you're like, maybe he's a bit limited there. So what they're doing is they're saying, if this guy doesn't need to see the field for us in day one, or hell, year one, does he have the ability to develop in? And one of the things that I have loved about him is I've heard some of the interviews with him. He speaks, and it's not the articulation that impresses me. It's the processing ability of being able to speak and point out exactly what he's trying to say without hesitation. He's a very smart dude. You can see that in the way that he speaks. One of the biggest things for a linebacker is having that quick ability to process, see things, and relay and communicate. So while it's just an interview and not playing football, you can't draw a conclusion on what kind of player is this guy going to be because of how he speaks in the interview. What you can say is that he processes what is being asked of him, and he has an answer, and he can relay it in a very easy to digest manner. That is a critical component of that position, that if he learns this playbook, he learns this scheme, and he can relay that to other players, That's a valuable trait, man, in itself, not let alone that 10-second split in the actual athleticism that he possesses.
All right, so we all know Katie's love for Eli Heidenreich. He went to Pittsburgh. I mean, you couldn't go to a worse team as far as I'm concerned. I can't stand that fan base. But I wanted to bring this up because I wanted to ask you guys. Give me your biggest surprise from draft weekend, whether that was a player you thought slipped, went early, and while you're thinking, because I didn't prep you guys at all.
Yeah, what a fucking tough question to ask on the fly, bro.
You got to roll with it. For me, the biggest pain for me, obviously, was Jacob Rodriguez going to Miami. But I was right. You did have to trade up to go and get him. It was like 43. I think Carolina should have made the move. But most shocking pick to me, and we talked about it on the live stream, was Ty Simpson. Hands down, was stunned that it wasn't wide receiver for the Rams, and was just shocked at the amount of players that were still on the board when Carolina picked. I mean, we kept going through them. Every pick, we're like, are you serious? They just kept falling. None of these guys we thought that were going to fall just kept falling to Carolina. So I did not expect Thieneman to be there when Carolina picked, and some of the wide receivers that were there. So that probably was the biggest shock for me. I know that's a kind of an obvious one, but the way the Rams went about it, and then even Sean McVay's reaction after was, I know he's kind of backtracked and tried to cover his ass a little bit more now about it, but he did not look happy, and I've seen him with draft picks when he likes them, and that guy is smiling ear to ear and looks like he's had like 100 Monsters and 6 Red Bulls to drink and a caffeine pill too. Like, that did not look like a Sean McVay pick, to put it bluntly. But guys, I should have given you enough time. I tried to tap dance a little bit here. Working in TV, I know how to do a thing or two. But Ricky and Bryson, who was your biggest shocker?
I'll say for me, it started pretty early, and that was Jeremiah Love to the Cardinals. I was not expecting that, with the running back room that they have. I thought they were going to go a different route there, but they get a really good player. The pick that upset me the most, I would say, was Jordan Tyson to the Saints, because I think he's going to be a problem for us for years to come, as long as he stays healthy. Not looking forward to facing him twice a year. I loved him coming out as a prospect. We talked about him time and time again on the show. And I was hoping the Saints would make a stupid pick there and go something crazy no one expected, and then they came away with Jordan Tyson, and that was upsetting to me. So I would say those two picks were probably the most shocking to me.
Ty Simpson makes a ton of sense, and I think that was definitely like the most like jarring early on, just because of the players that were available to LA that had connections. The Mekhi Lemon, again, even Kenyon Sadiq. They ended up drafting Max Clare in the second, so they clearly were looking at that tight end position. They utilized their tight ends extremely well. I love the Max Clare pick for them. So without being surprised first, and then I'll give you my homer answer to this. Without being surprised, is one of the things that I loved about the way this draft unfolded, guys, was the value that they saw on players that I also saw value on. Will Kazmarek going early on to the Dolphins, I think shows that tight ends are not simply like Eli Stellers didn't go that much earlier than Will Kazmarek. And for me, that shows that tight end is not just go out there and catch passes and run routes. There is value in these blockers, and the NFL is getting back to some bully football. And so I thought that was interesting. I think that for me, guys, this is a homer thing to say. Sam Hecht was my biggest surprise, falling all the way into round 5 when I truly had a second round grade and thought of him as a top, 50-ish type player, 60-ish player. I thought that this was a guy that really deserved to go earlier. I think that this chip that is going to be on his shoulder from that and feeling like he was a little bit overlooked, I think it's tremendous for the Carolina Panthers. Kamari Ramsey was another guy that went in that same round. I believe he went in round 4 or 5. I thought that was great value for Houston that got him. That is going to be dangerous. Houston is great on their secondary as well. So seeing what a player like he can do over there with that supporting cast, with that pass rush in front of him, I think that he has potential to really show up. But yeah, Jordan Tyson, the thing I'll say about that, Bryson, is, he's got to beat out a ringer over there in New Orleans too, by the name of Jalen Polk. So we'll see if Jordan Tyson can handle that kind of competition.
I think he's got that one in the bag, buddy.
Ricky, you go take your little break. I did want to
thank you for telling everybody.
I did want to second. I did want to second kind of what Bryson said. The Jordan Tyson pick pissed me off. The Oscar Delt pick by the Saints pissed me off.
The Saints had a good draft, dude.
Yeah, I thought the Saints had a decent draft. I can't remember if it was Tampa Bay or Atlanta. Also, I was a fan of theirs, and I can't remember exactly. I think it was probably Tampa. I did want to mention something. Talon reached out to me, last year's fan of the year. It's Keep Pounding Day tomorrow. He's going to be out at Bank of America Stadium around 1 o'clock-ish. They're painting he's painting the lung cancer ribbons near the Sam's Mills statue. If anyone is in Charlotte and wants to join in on that, he's looking for people. So I'm just throwing it out there. This will be by the Sam Mills statue at Bank of America Stadium. They're painting ribbons. You want to join and help them out, reach out to him on Twitter. He would gladly appreciate it. So just wanted to shout that out quick and just throw that out there for y'all. This is a great time. Hey, if you do not subscribe to our YouTube channel, go do it. Hit the subscribe button on our homepage. Also, click the join button. You can become a member. We do a ton of giveaways, and we give a leg up to our members. Most of our members end up winning the giveaways. So Katie can vouch for that. She's won a draft hat. Some other folks have won. We gave away a jersey, a framed jersey. We've given away the draft jerseys. We've also given away a signed helmet by KK Short, which was given to one of our members. They won the drawing. So take advantage of both of those things. Guys, I wanted to – go ahead.
I thought of something while I was away on my journey.
The video.
No, I thought of something, though, with the question about the surprise picks, and it is in the division guy that fell, Ruben Bain Jr.
Yeah.
I'm not pleased about him ending up in Tampa. The walk-up that he had after being chosen where he just grabbed the hat was very Nick Gordon-esque to me, and we know how that has panned out for Carolina Panthers. That worries me, boys. I do not love the idea of going up against Ruben Bain Jr. For the foreseeable future.
We were saying we thought Tampa Bay had a solid
draft. Had a great draft. And one last thing before we get into the draft or the depth chart is I wanted to highlight Talon here, his comment from earlier. I don't think that we got to this.
We did. I just pitched that while you
never mind. Okay. Perfect.
But hey, no, hit it again.
Lovely.
I didn't pull up the comment. I just talked about it.
Yeah, he just said he'll be in Charlotte tomorrow for Keep Pounding Day, trying to do some good for the community tomorrow. Keep pounding. I just wanted to highlight that because I appreciate what Talon has done as an ambassador, as the fan of the year for the Carolina Panthers, and him continuing that and keep putting the work into this community and doing that. Talon is a great dude, and any support that anyone could provide to him if he's, offering up any kind of, hey, get involved with me while I'm doing these things. Talon, you have my support on that kind of stuff, and happy to, boost that any way that we can. So I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, 1 o'clock tomorrow, he'll be at the Sam Mills statue outside Bank of America painting the lung cancer ribbons. If you want to join him, message him on Twitter. He would love the help. So push that again. Let's get into the depth chart a little bit. I didn't include the undrafted free agents. Is there any guy you guys want to highlight in that undrafted group at all? But I'll get the depth chart up. But I was just curious because we didn't really talk about it. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know guys. I know the Notre Dame corner is somewhat interesting, it sounds like, from the stats he put up last year, but that was probably the only one that I saw.
Hayes King's kind of interesting.
Hayes King,
yeah. Oh yeah, and King, yeah. Well, that's the one guy I have on the depth chart. Quarterback. I thought we put him in here. Here we go. Let's try that. So this is both offense and defense. It's probably really hard to read, honestly.
Yeah, I can't read it.
I had no idea that if I put 100 players' names in a small graphic that it would be difficult.
Yeah, I tried. But yeah,
just make your screens real big like your grandma at a restaurant. Use the flashlight and use a magnifying glass.
No, if you make it full screen, you can actually see it without it's not too bad. But let's just start offensively. the conversation, and I promised the person, they brought it up in the chat, so let's talk about it. Wide receiver room. So Carolina, they have 2 first-round picks invested in that room. They have Jalen Coker, who more than likely is going to probably get a contract extension at some point here. They signed John Mechie in the offseason, tied to Bryson, played college with him. They draft Brazel in the 3rd round. Out of this room, who is the odd man out? They had draft Jimmy Horn in the 6th last year. Who is the odd man out of this room looking at it right now?
I would probably go the second John Mechie name that you have listed.
Sorry, I didn't include David Moore, so someone's going to hit me for that. But that's all right.
Yeah, I would go David Moore. And then I think Jimmy Horn's at risk out of that group. I personally I really like Mechie. I think he's here to stay. I don't think he's going anywhere. I like Tremaine for what he brings blocking wise, and I think he's got some upside still in receiving the ball, catching the ball. And guys, I don't know. Leggett, I don't think he's going to be cut by any means.
Stop it.
I don't think he's going to be cut by any means, but I would not be surprised if they are shopping him heavily at this point or at some point leading up to the season to see what they can get. I mean, that room is tight right now, really tight. And they're obviously, T-Mac's going nowhere. Coker's going nowhere. Obviously, their 3rd round pick this year is going nowhere. So after that, you bring in Mechie. It is a low-level contract, right? But I think that relationship there with Bryce, they brought him in for a reason. So from there, it's just so tight for me that I wouldn't be surprised to see any of those 3 guys I mentioned go.
If you're playing a drinking game at home and you're taking a shot every time we say special teams, now would be a good time to put us on mute because you're going to get blasted right now.
Pause.
But special teams, I think, is the key here when we look at this wide receiver room. Bryson, you bring up Bryson Tremaine. You know what's a big threat to Bryson Tremaine's roster spot on this team right now?
Let me guess. Special teams.
And Felipe Franks.
Oh,
the addition of Felipe Franks coming back to Carolina, because Franks was a standout in Atlanta. He was a standout here as well during his time in Carolina as a special teams player. They bring him back. He's not a shoe-in to make the roster, but he is going to press for that special teams. And when you look at Jimmy Horn Jr., the other name that Bryson mentioned, man, you're in a world of hurt right now if you're a Jimmy Horn truther, in my opinion, because of that John Mechie signing. If John Mechie is a better slot receiver than Jimmy Horn Jr., and Jimmy Horn doesn't offer anything in the return game, which we had used him, sparsely as a returner in opportunities, if they don't feel comfortable with that, and if they look at Xavier Leggett, the other guy that you just mentioned, and they say, hey, we got to find a way for him to contribute and have value to this roster. Don't know if you guys will remember this, and I was called crazy for saying this about Xavier Leggett, but perhaps he should be your kick returner. If you need a runway getting going and you can't get your offensive game going, perhaps that's where he gets a shot. Now, he did it in college. Is this a position where they try to get him back involved in there? I think that Xavier Leggett also offers a lot as a blocker, though, as a wide receiver. And they're not going to get away completely from their identity just because they brought in Chris Brazel in the 3rd round. They're not just going to say, hey, we're all finesse now. We don't care about the run game. The run game is still going to be the catalyst of this offense. If they run some more 11 personnel because of what they brought in, then Xavier Leggett becomes valuable because of his blocking ability. So I do think that he ends up making the roster still. I don't think that that's really that much of a question. Jimmy Horn Jr., Bryson Tremaine, and sure, David Moore. But you know what? David Moore, I think, is still going to have value. Inside-out versatility as a receiver, knowing the playbook and his special teams. You talk about punt returner. David Moore might be one of your more sure-handed punt returners. Does he offer the dynamic playmaking as a punt returner? Not so much. But hell, we need a guy that can catch the punt return and not be frazzled by that ball coming down on him. And that is David Moore. So David Moore might find his value there as well. And you might be looking at Bryson Tremaine and Jimmy Horn Jr. looking on the outside, looking in when it all is said and done. John Mechie is going to have to prove it in camp. But I think that was a very specific move to bring John Mechie into the fold. And I don't think that is as much of a camp body as it is, hey, we want you to fight for this roster spot because we do like what you offer.
So how many receivers would they carry with?
Let's go. We got T-Mac, Chris Brazzell, Xavier Legette, Jalen Coker, John Mechie, and if you give David Moore, which I'll give him the inside track right now, that's 6. And I think that they could carry 6.
Okay. I think David Moore's gone. I mean, this keeping this guy like practice squad maybe, but I think his time is done here. Dude was injured most of last year. I think the writing's on the wall. He'll be a camp body. He'll let some of the rookies learn, what he knows about this offense. But Jimmy Horn's interesting. Man, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that, but maybe you guys are right.
Jimmy Horn was a 6th-round pick.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, yeah.
Like, when he got opportunities, he wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But they didn't seem to have an idea what to do with him. And I think that they drafted him for the wrong reason. If they expected him to be that yak creator, I don't think that's his game. I think he's more of a route runner. And if they brought in John Mechie, is he a better route runner and proven receiver than John Mechie? That's a direct competition. But is he better than John Mechie?
I don't think so.
I mean, we're going to find that out. I don't know either. John has had his share of difficulties and tribulations that he's gone through. But when he's on the field, man, he offers a pretty solid wide receiver, in my opinion. Not a dynamic change the trajectory of your offense, but hey, he offers something.
Yeah, maybe they cut him and he ends up in Cleveland with Shador. I could see that happening.
But just Jimmy Horn Jr. could probably make our practice squad. Like I don't think you're going to have a team come and try to poach the 6th-round player that Cleveland didn't contribute much, right?
Cleveland might. It's Cleveland.
Yeah, maybe.
But I guess the bigger question is, do you think Carolina, and this kind of maybe goes back to the draft, do you think Carolina has done enough offensively to surround Bryce Young with weapons in probably the biggest year in the NFL for him, as far as his contract goes in the future with Carolina?
I personally think the tight end room could be upgraded a little bit, but I think when you have players like Jonathan Brooks coming back, of course Chuba's going to be there. You've added T-Mac. You've added another wide receiver in the draft this year. The offensive line has gotten better. I think Bryce is in a very good position right now to succeed. I think the wide receiver room is dynamic. Again, I would have loved to have seen a tight end added in this draft, specifically pretty high in the draft. But I think that's the one area on the offense that has question marks at this point. I think Coker is an extremely dynamic, proven receiver when he's on the field if he stays healthy. Of course, we saw what T-Mac does in his rookie season. He's only going to get better. So I think Bryce is in a very good spot to succeed as long as everyone around him stays healthy, and he stays healthy too. So I like where we're at on the offense.
I think you nailed it, Bryson, when you said offensive line, because we talked about this in all of our mock drafts and the prospect of drafting Monroe Freeling specifically. We talked about this. The fan base seems to think that drafting an offensive lineman or adding quality players to the offensive line isn't a direct correlation to making the offense better. And it is. It is one of the biggest elements to making the offense better. And so adding Monroe Freeling, adding Sam Heck, adding the depth pieces of Luke Fortner and Rasheed Walker, still having Taylor Moton, still having Damian Lewis, if Robert Hunt is healthy, that offensive line is the best offensive line unit on paper that Bryce Young has had in the NFL. And he has made things shake at times with worse offensive lines. Then you talk about the wide receiver position specifically. They have allocated a top 10 pick to Tedero McMillan, who was the rookie of the year. They have Chris Brazzell, the speed element that they just drafted in the 3rd round this year. They have Xavier Legette, who was a first-round pick. Whether you like him as a first-round pick or not, that's what he is. Jalen Coker, when healthy, is arguably the best to second-best receiver that we have seen over the past 2 seasons, right? I would say Tedero McMillan clears, obviously, but when Jalen Coker is healthy, he's got a rapport with Bryce Young, and he produces. So if you're just looking at that position, Yes, I think they have enough, especially when adding the depth of an NFL veteran like John Mechie and having the presence of Chris Brazzell. The tight end room is where I agree with you 100,000%, Bryson. I would have loved to seen a true dynamic receiving threat added. They might still believe that to be JT Sanders. And that is where fans are going to have to kind of like tie themselves, marry themselves to the idea that our perception may not be the perception in the building. And JT dealt with injuries. He's going to be fully healthy. Let's see where he's weighing when he comes into spring training, or not spring training, training camp in spring ball. Sorry, I've got baseball in my mind still. The season's been, a roller coaster for a Cubs fan. But I think that Tommy Tremble is still a favorite there with this coaching staff. They like his blocking ability. Mitchell Evans is going to get more involved as well. Does he offer that Pat Freiermuth type of role in his second season? That's the player that I had him comp to last season. Maybe he does, and maybe they like that, especially opening up more space underneath with the addition of Chris Brazzell and incorporating Tetero McMillan and Jalen Coker if he's healthy for the full 17. The running back room is where, if you ask me, did we give Bryce Young enough? Jonathan Brooks is coming back, boys. And JP asked if we could get some Jonathan Brooks talk. You got it right here, my friend, live on Broad Street. Jonathan Brooks is a dynamic wild card to what this offense can be. And as a founding member of the Jonathan Brooks fan club, I am here with a public service announcement of saying this dude's going to prove everybody right. And all the doubters that didn't like him and thought it was a wasted pick, he's going to prove y'all wrong. I think Jonathan Brooks comes back and shows off why he was my number one ranked running back in that class, why he was a lot of people's number one ranked running back in that class. This is a dynamic football player that is going to add an element that we have been sorely missing at that running back position. And ETN being more incorporated. Look, they didn't just waste a 4th round pick on ETN last season either. He didn't get used because Rico Dowdle and Chuba were competent last season. They're going to add different things into this mix. And I think that what we have on offense, if Bryce Young is going to get this big contract, yeah, they got enough, man. It is time to take that next step. Y'all know how much I love Bryce Young and my confidence level in Bryce Young, but I am absolutely on board with this statement right here. It is time. You show up this year, man, and consistently. You got the protection. You got the tools. I want Bryce Young to have his best season, and I want him to elevate the players around him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you touched on Jonathan Brooks. I think he's going to be a huge addition to this room, but we also have to temper expectations of a guy coming off of a second ACL, and he has not played really much NFL football in, 2 years? I mean, we're that far removed.
And he's still 23 years old.
Yeah, he's young, but running backs have a very short shelf life in this league. And 2 major injuries at that position is tough. And I think people need I'm excited. I'm glad he's cleared. And, we got to see a very small glimpse of what he could possibly do in this league. But I think we also need to temper expectations on that as well.
Throw the tempered expectations out of the fucking room to the moon with Jonathan Brooks. I'm planting my flag right now. This dude, as OPM said here, says, my former student who works for the Panthers told me Brooks has been in the building all day, every day, working his ass off. I believe it. You heard him speak, man, about the internal doubt that he's had in himself, and finding who he is was just baptized. And he said it was getting rid of some of those doubts and feelings of like, hey, I have to subscribe to other people's things and not have my own original, being how I feel about things and attack things, how I internally view them. That's internal motivation. This dude is a great athlete, and he wants to prove it. And I think he's going to do that for himself and for the team that bet and invest on him. I think this is the year, man. I think Jonathan Brooks is going to light shit up. And I don't care if it sounds ridiculous or if I'm just being romantic. Y'all already know my prediction, 17-0 right now anyways. So Jonathan Brooks is going to be the comeback player of the year, and he's going to rush for 1,000 yards, and he's going to get 10 fucking scores. Write it down right now. Write it in your diary. Ricky said it.
Going back to the question, because I didn't even answer it earlier about this offense, and I'm kind of with Bryson on this. I do have concern that Carolina didn't do enough offensively. We have to remember this offense was still 20 or below in production, and a lot of those numbers let's be real, we're boosted by Rico Dowdle, whether you want to admit that or not. The 3 or 4 games he had where he had the 200 and 300 yard game, or the 200 plus yard games, those numbers are skewed off of that limited production he had in those couple of weeks. And then Dave Canales giving up the play calling, Brad Igzik, first time play calling. Like, there is so much changing here. And what does Bevel provide for this offense? Did Carolina do enough with really Tetero McMillan doing much of the, carrying of this wide receiver room, and then Jalen Coker later in the year? Can Coker play an entire season? Does Leggett have any hope after the first 2 years of that have been duds up to this point? So I think there is a ton of questions. I know Bryce Young obviously has improved, but Carolina, like this, I think this is a huge year for this offense and kind of make or break for Canales. I know they've gotten up to this point and they make their first playoff appearance in 7-8 years or whatever it was, but the guy gave up those play calls, and that's kind of your like almost last ditch effort. He can always take it back, but like this offense needs to get going. We wanted to shit on this defense so much, and we've seen vast improvement out of Evero from the year where they were the worst ever to this past season. And I think Carolina's offense needs to take that next jump for me at least to be satisfied. And we'll see if they did enough. I do agree. I do think Monroe Freeling is going to provide some more time for Bryce Young, but I think this is a massive year for them.
My lowest expectation, right? Like, to keep it realistic and ground a little bit, I just think that this is going to end up being the Carolina Panthers against the Houston Texans in the Super Bowl. Bryce Young versus CJ Stroud for the Lombardi Trophy. And that's just on the low end of things. You know what I mean? I think that on the high end of things, I think that the entire league gives up after week 13 and just hands us the trophy because we're going to be so dominant and so incredible at every asset of the game, or every facet of the game. This is the year that we party on Mint Street. It's not going to be a protest. It's not going to be a march. It's going to be a celebration. I'm going to be banging buckets like drums. I'm going to be lighting couches on fire. Bryson's going to be jumping over them, holding his newborn. Curtis is going to bring his newborn, his kid. Max is going to be leading chants. He's going to be cursing. I'm going to let him say all the curse words in the world. Carolina Panthers are going to do it this year, man. I still believe right now 17-0. Talk to me in August.
Let's go.
All right, let's go to the defense real quick here. The weakest position group on defense is fill in the blank.
Linebacker.
Yeah.
But outside of Devin Lloyd.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Devin Lloyd's one of the top players specifically on the defense, but behind him, he is, that depth is scary at this point. We're an injury away from the same linebacking core last season minus Roseboom. So that's scary to me. I felt like they needed to add a little bit more there. And maybe Jackson Kuwach is like the next coming of Luke Kuechly, and he fills in nicely.
Yeah.
We can hope and pray, but I'm not extremely hopeful for that. So I would definitely say linebacker.
And I do think that the addition of Devin Lloyd is tremendous there, though. Like, we can't undersell that. I don't want to make that seem like we're doubting that part, but you look at that depth chart. I mean, it is a Devin Lloyd injury away from being worse than last year. And so that is concerning, especially when we saw how significant that position is for this defense, right? But the edge position, I feel better about that than I have in a long time, guys. Jalen Phillips and Nick.
I was going to say we didn't mention edge for a
man.
while.
Jalen Phillips and Nick Scorton. I am ready for that takeover. First of all, but then Pat Jones coming back that's not talked about enough. Pat Jones is a consistent contributor, and he was really good. And I had my doubts about Pat Jones coming into the season. He played really well, and Princely Umanmielen is going to take a step. Travis Gibson was pretty solid for us. Thomas Incoom is the lightning strike on special teams, and I think that he can also contribute as a rotational rusher. I just think that unit is really improved and really solid and deep. The defensive line, I know that people have doubts about Bobby Brown. I don't necessarily. I think that he's actually going to flourish with more reps and more consistent playing time. Turk Wharton, get healthy, man. He still offers something. Maybe it's not the $17 million that he got, but this isn't a bad football player, man. And when he was healthy, he did some things. Cam Jackson is a guy they're gonna really rely on taking a step up. And then Lee Hunter is a lot of people's darlings. if he's as good as people think he is, it should take a step forward, man. So, like, I'm on board with this defense. And I think that Evero showed that he can make the moves that he needs to make to get this defense playing good ball. And he's got more tools at his disposal to really open up his scheme, in my opinion.
I think linebacker is the obvious one, but one we haven't mentioned is nickel. I think a lot of us are out really at this point on 26 Shaw Smith-Wade, and wanted, to see an addition there in the draft to that room. We really, I know they added a corner, but really for a fit for that spot. And I feel like nickel's huge in Evero's defense. So that one, but I think linebacker, we are an injury away of Sherlis, Martin Scott. I said it on the mock draft. Windman, like those guys stepping in. Obviously, Devin Lloyd, like, really boosts this room without question. But those guys behind him, and does Trevin Wallace take that next step? He's coming off of shoulder surgery, I believe it is.
Back to back.
So, like, what does he do in this spot? And does Devin Lloyd kind of take some of the heat off of him to kind of, flourish a little bit more in this defense? It remains to be seen. We'll see if it happens. But I think those are the two. But you guys are comfortable. Like, you said defense makes them, like, are we talking, do you think at this point the expectation should be this defense is top 15?
Yeah.
100%.
If not top 10?
Top 15. I think so. Absolutely.
Because what were they this last year, like, statistically? Like,
right in that, like, 18 to 22 or somewhere in that range.
They were that high?
I think so. Yeah.
Shit, okay.
Points per game and stuff like that, I think they were.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
they're
where
healthy. Yeah. You add a player like Jalen Phillips to that edge room. You add Devin Lloyd to the defense. Trayvon Merrick is healthy coming in this year. You have playmakers at every position. You look at – you can name I would argue, an elite player at every single position in this team except nickelback or nickel. So I think as long as they're healthy, and Nick Scorton coming into another year, adding that help across from him. Ricky mentioned Pat Jones coming back. He was playing at a very high level before he got injured. Princely another year. Like, there's depth and then there's that high end talent at each position. So I think this defense can be top 15. I think they should be top 15 as long as they stay healthy.
Got a question here from Sean McCreary that says, do any undrafted free agents make the 53 roster?
They usually do in Carolina.
Well, and that's what I was just about to say, Curtis, is that usually I think that we all find a darling or two that we think can make it. But looking at the depth of NFL talent on the roster this year coming into Carolina, I don't think it's as clear that one will. I know people like Devontae Smith. It's possible that he carves out a spot and makes it. He's very light, first of all. Devontae Smith is like 170 pounds, 175 pounds, very light. So from a threshold standpoint for Ejiro Evero, that is not his, usual type. Does he maybe do enough in preseason and in camp to carve that role out? Possibly. Special teams is going to have to be a thing for him as well. Take a shot, special teams again. But I think that the likelihood of an undrafted free agent is the lowest it's been in a long time here in Carolina, because you're going to have to beat out some proven football players now. And that's a really good thing. Haynes King. Does he I think
that's a possibility.
Does he make the 53, though? He's going to have to beat out Kenny Pickett. And I know that people don't love Kenny Pickett, but Kenny Pickett is not a awful backup quarterback.
To make the initial, though, I think he could. I think Will Grier is a placeholder. I don't think he's
Will Grier is a let's find out what the second and third string guys have.
And does Carolina take 3 with Haynes King and then hide them away on the practice squad type?
Well, they don't have to. They don't have to have 3 active on the roster. They can have that third emergency quarterback called up on game day. I just think that Haynes King is more of a practice squad player. I think that all the undrafted free agents, they might have some priority practice squad, placement, but I don't see any of them making the 53 looking at this roster currently with no injuries.
Which is, it's not a knock on these guys, because some of the, we know what Jalen Coker did and we know what Corey Thornton did, but I think that's a good thing. Like, we shouldn't be mad at that. Like, Carolina's, their roster is getting deeper, and that's
if you have an NFL team that doesn't have undrafted free agents come in and kick NFL players off the roster, I don't think that's a bad thing.
Bryson, anything to add to that?
Nope. I'm in agreement with you guys. Sorry, I just muted myself. I have a hard time finding a position where potentially one could come in. Maybe if they want to move off Chandler Zavala, I'd be perfectly fine with that. With any undrafted free agent, that could be a kicker, a punter, fifth string quarterback. They want to put at right guard. They want to move off him. I'm good with that. But other than that, I think this team, this roster's pretty solid at this point.
Well, I think we're going to leave it there for the most part. I do want to share some news that I got through a source, and this is, I got to fill you guys in on Brady Christensen because that's been my guy for a while. But he's been obviously coming back from an injury. And per my source, it sounds like he is hopeful to be ready to go by the start of July with his injury. Carolina did express interest in bringing him back in early free agency. That was obviously before things panned out with free agency in the draft. So I don't know where they're at now, but they did offer some sort of contract to him with a lot of, what do you want to call
incentives.
it? Like medical, what was the exact word on this?
Parameter, thresholds, incentives.
Yeah. And Brady wasn't comfortable with doing that at that point. So that's why he hasn't signed a contract. He kind of wants to get things cleared so that he can have a contract that's a little bit better for him. So we'll see where that pans out, if it's in Carolina or somewhere else. But that is kind of the update on Brady going forward. And I would not be mad with bringing him back. That guy's got versatility, and I'd rather see him on the roster than Zavala. So we'll see kind of where that pans out. But I wanted to fill you guys in on that. But we want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. We will probably take some time off. I think we'll probably be back whenever the schedule's released in a couple of weeks, like we typically do. But we appreciate every single one of you. Take a little rest. It's been a lot with this draft. It seems like forever. I know Ricky's like, thank God this is over.
I've been out here being a little socialite, man, going to concerts and restaurants and just seeing what normal life is like. It's pretty cool, man.
But no, we appreciate all you guys, whether you tuned in during the live streams of the draft, throughout all of our stupid mock drafts we did. It was a lot of fun. We appreciate you guys. But we'll be back in a couple of weeks. And until then, as always,